Hi, a very good morning to everyone from India, that is. I know it's too early in the morning for many friends from Europe who have joined, and also late in the afternoon for many parts of Southeast Asia and Australia. Friends like Nadine who have joined from Bali are almost getting into their midnight hour now. Uh, this is the second webinar in the series. Uh, it's a it's a webinar series that has been curated and organized by the World Forum of Fisher People, Asia Pacific Continental Fora, and the Coastal Action Network being primary organizers. There are many organizations who have joined hands, especially fisher unions and organizations from 6 countries in the Asia Pacific region, and support organizations are facilitating this. So these countries are Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, India, Thailand, Indonesia, and Malaysia. The whole idea for this set of webinars, essentially we started with one webinar plan, which was done on 9th of September, and 11th follow-up session was held. And the essential idea for this webinars came from the fact that one, we have very similar issues across the Asia Pacific continental fora, and we need to actually have a concerted effort as we are also building up towards the General Assembly of the World Forum of Fisher People from 14th of November to 21st of November to be held in Brazil. So as we build up towards that, it is essential that the fishing communities in Asia Pacific region need to have a concerted voice, a kind of a broad spectrum of issues that we are able to bring on to the table when we are going to meet in Brazil. So that is where our primary concern was coming from. The secondary concern comes from the fact that be it issues of land conflict that the fishers are having with state and corporation, be it the whole issue of this fast mode shifting that is happening from capture, which is hunting fisheries, to culture, which is largely represented by the word aquaculture. Or be it the whole question of the identity of the fishers themselves, multiple terminologies like small scale fishers, small scale fisheries, traditional, historical, artisanal fisheries. All of these terms have been in existence for very many years, while small scale seems to have entered the scenario even without a great deal of a debate from the fishing communities on whether are we talking about small scale fisheries or are we actually getting into a new identity of these small scale fisheries. So this is the context for the 3 webinars we initiated. There are discussions going on about whether we can actually insert another very important component into this, which is the whole question of mining. From sand mining to mining for rare earth minerals that is happening in the coastland and in the sea, to deep sea mining, which is an altogether different ball game that has been going on. And corporations and frontier states have been increasingly getting into this space, taking away the livelihood spaces and rights of the fishing community. So this is where we are coming into this webinar with. This is the second in the series, thanks to WFP and CAN and all the other support solidarity organizations that have been there. We request everyone to mute themselves once you join. All the other solidarity organizations have been there, like from Thailand, STF has been there, Coast, Bangladesh has been there, from Sri Lanka, NAPSO has been there, from India, CAN, Environment Law Trust, SNEHA, PSA, Delhi Forum, Friends of the Earth India, South Asian Solidarity Collective. Many of us have been part of this. From Indonesia, Kira has been playing a key role for Indonesia. From Malaysia, support organizations are there. So I think this whole spectrum of organizations and groups have one common interest, which is to be able to bring up some of the core issues that the community has been facing over the past years into the forefront as we march on to the greatest and the largest assembly of fisher people in the world, which is going to happen in November in Brazil as the General Assembly of the World Forum of Fisher People. Just a quick line to say that, for example, both CAN and WFFP have their origins in the 1990s. 90s, as you know, was also the time when early 90s, when things like the coastal regulation zone was set in India. India had played a significant role even in the formational meeting of the World Forum as it happened towards the World Forum of Fish Workers and Fish Harvesters in 1997. So I think it's important that we remember that history. The 21st of November has become the World Fishers Day, World Fisheries Day, World Fishers Day, primarily from the point of view that 21st of November was when the first Global Assembly was held in New Delhi in 1997. Now, even that day stands threatened. Last 3 years, there has been consistent efforts to take over that and make it into World Fisheries and Aquaculture Day. That is where we are standing today. That is the challenge that we have in front of us as fisher communities, as solidarity organizations and networks towards advocacy campaign, all of that. And I remember the days when in 1990s, the Coastal Action Network had taken the lead for this big fight against intensive industrial aquaculture. And they won the battle in the Supreme Court of India, where the Supreme Court actually put a ban on intensive industrial aquaculture farms that were polluting, that were causing a lot of difficulties across the board, as we will hear today again. The point here is we do have a historical stake in this whole battle. Today's webinar is a step forward in that, and none other than Ms. Jesuratnam and Ganpati Alagar, two pioneers in this battle, two women comrades, two feminists, two community leaders who have been part of the struggle as solidarity workers for many decades now. I would request Comrade Jesuratnam, the director of SNEHA and also the convener of the Coastal Action Network. She's also the convener of the Continental Fora of WFFP in Asia Pacific region. She's a CC member of WFFP. I would request Jesuratnam to greet us all with a word of welcome, and then we proceed towards Gandhiaka to do a context setting. Over to you, Jesuka.
1 minute. Yeah. Yes. Good morning to everyone. And I cannot say that because some may be having very early morning, but yet wishes to all of you. As Vijay has given a very detailed briefing also, almost, but I would like to say that the World Forum of Fisher People is having its 8th General Assembly in November in Brazil from 14th to 22nd November. So in this context, this event and the previous event webinar, both the webinars and the coming one, third one also, we look into the taking this as a preparatory work as well as to take forward the issues which WFFP is focusing in the General Assembly. As mostly now Vijay has shared about the WFFP process itself, I would like to go into what this General Assembly is focusing on. This General Assembly has 3 thematic areas. That is, one is food sovereignty, then climate crisis and ocean grabbing. Most of the things what is done in ocean grabbing was just mentioned earlier. That is deep sea mining and components of whatever is happening in the ocean, the name of blue economy, and other developments, the entire ocean is being privatized, corporatized, and so. And we are there to discuss all these main themes in the General Assembly, which is coming in November. So today we have because we are on the webinar, which focuses on very apt topic related to the WFP themes also. Yeah, that is the thematic area what we are focusing today is on food sovereignty. That is the challenges to food sovereignty. That in the name of blue transformation, the shift from capture fisheries to culture fisheries, and the challenges what we are facing in food sovereignty. So that is a very timely intervention, and the webinar is focusing on this, which will highlight many of the case studies here will highlight what is happening, the name of culture fisheries and the shift which is taking place, which affects the fishers also. And so I welcome all the case study presenters from the different countries, and they have a very rich knowledge. And Vijayan, the moderator, will introduce them in detail. But now I welcome each one who is presenting here, and also the expert panel, followed up by the expert panel, focusing on the same themes, but different areas. So, and now next comes, we have with us the UN rapporteur, was very much interested and to join us, expressed his willingness when we approached him, and immediately he accepted that. And here today he is with us, and he will be listening to all the case studies and the other expert panels presentations and make his observations and suggestions later. He is very good in advocacy. He has taken this blue stand against blue transformation, and that has really made FAO discuss about this. And so he's a human rights person. We are happy to have him here. So I welcome him. And the expert team members present here, Paula, Siddharth, Jones Patagas, also they are expert in their own areas, and they will be presenting. And Gandhimati, the convener, the General Secretary of Coastal Action Network, has a very long history of interventions with the coastal issues, and she is here to present now. And so I welcome her. And all the people here, Herman, the General Secretary of WFP, and Nadine, the co-chair of WFP, and the one who started and was supported us to initiate this, the webinar process, and also all the other four, the Asia Pacific Continental Fora representatives here. The Asia Pacific Continental, similar to Asia Pacific Continental Fora, there are other continental foras who are also going to have a similar process, and there are similar processes in other continents also. So there are representatives from other areas also present here. I welcome all and the participants here from each and every state and country and global. So, and the interpreters who are supporting so that it reaches everyone. Thank you. I welcome one and all, and I hand the forum to Gandhimati. Sorry, I have left Vijayan to welcome Vijayan and also introduce Vijayan. Vijayan is the and human rights activist and a thinker and a political thinker who has taken forward many political issues also and human rights issues in different forums, like the fisher people being affected all over the world and also at least in the India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and the Asia Pacific region, and also India Pakistan People's Forum for Peace and Democracy. He is the General Secretary. And and the researcher in Carnegie International, he has come out with very good articles. So I welcome Vijayan as he is the moderator of this whole webinar. And I welcome him also. And now I hand over the forum, the platform to Gandhi Madi. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesu. I take this opportunity to thank all the organizers, facilitators, and I request someone to take care of the admit, because I have been giving the admit to whoever is joining. Now I'm presenting my session. So as the theme is rightly reflected by Mr. Vijayan and again continued by Mr. Jesrathanam, I'm happy to share my views as part of CAN, Coastal Action Network. Capture fisheries refer to the gathering and hunting of fish from natural water bodies, where coastal aquaculture mainly consists of culturing shrimp and other aquatic species in all the coastal water landscapes, especially with human intervention and
Gandhika, you've been muted. Gandhi, can you unmute?
It's only unmuted.
Yeah.
There
Now
is
we
no
can hear.
screening. Can I read?
Yeah.
No,
Please.
I can hear, but what about screening?
Yeah, we will just do that.
My PPT is not shared.
Yeah, Priya is just doing that.
Thank you, Priya. Nimbi, can you kindly see someone to admit, because it keeps coming?
No, we are taking care of that. Not to worry.
Doing
You
that
can ignore
regularly.
it.
I'm doing that regularly.
Please continue, Akka.
Can I start?
Yes,
Yes, please.
Yeah. So, as I already shared, the indigenous capital fishing communities in India have been the traditional custodians of the sea and coastal land. They always had customary rights over the coastal sea and land, and this was respected over centuries. Coastal aquaculture has been touted as the solution to both overfishing and food security, and is increasingly being sold as a means to regionalize coastal communities out of poverty and improve their standard of living. However, at least in South and Southeast Asia, there is anecdotal evidence and research to indicate that it is it is anything but an universal panacea. In reality, both marine and coastal aquaculture, with its emphasis on land ownership and big capital investment in making the nature resources space open for anybody and everybody, and thus violating the customary rights of the traditional fishers and coastal communities. Not only that, it leads to rapid degradation of coastal resources, the gradual decline of small-scale fisheries, and eventual marginalization of the small-scale fisher communities. The push and pull factors, government subsidies, low interest loans, grants and policies, skill training, market forces promotes the industrial aquaculture. Though UNCLOS allow small-scale fishers to fish in the contiguous zone, our state laws limit capture fishing up to 12 nautical miles in the territorial waters and often signal a shift towards aquaculture. Increasing consumer demand for farm fish over wild caught species, evidenced by research, and the rise
Gandhi?
in the government of private
Gandhi?
funding for
Gandhi, there is a
aquaculture
request
research.
that you speak a little slower so that they can pick it up. I know the time is an issue, but the translators have to do their job. So kindly go a little slower. Yeah, please continue.
Many traditional fishing communities are facing pressure to transition from capture fisheries to culture fisheries due to non-availability of wild fish stocks, destructive gears, degradation of habitat from effluents. This shift has not only led to loss of traditional role, leading to unemployment, underemployment, but also the social structures and cultural practices, impacting a community identity and sustainability of livelihoods in traditional fishing communities. The transition can erode community ties and traditional knowledge, leading to concerns about losing cultural heritage and conflicts over resources and approaches. Now I'm presenting an appeal before this audience that we have to really reflect on the universal think tank, the so-called donors like UNDP, World Bank, FAO, UNIFEM, and there are many others who is promoting industrial aquaculture, especially in Asia. And I'm giving the facts in India that there are so many, at least 11 schemes where both World Bank, FAO, and others have joined in promoting the various schemes of aquaculture. And in a nutshell, they want to promote the aquaculture. They want to double the production of aquaculture in India in 2025. And the other major impact is that they want to evict small-scale fishers from the fishery sector itself. And they're expecting them to join the mechanized sector or as laborers in aquaculture. Next slide. What are the environmental impacts, both capture fisheries and culture fisheries? If you see the capture fisheries, it rely on natural ecosystem where fish populations are regulated by environmental factors such as predation, food availability, and breeding cycle, which can prevent overpopulation, which reduces the need for human intervention in managing the population's waste or pollution. The sustainable fishing practices with restrictions on bycatch, gear restriction, and no-take zones can help preserve marine biodiversity and maintain the balance of marine ecosystem. Wild fish in capture fisheries are generally healthier because they live in their natural environment. When the capture fisheries properly managed, can be more sustainable in terms of their lower environmental footprint, lack of artificial inputs, and maintenance of biodiversity. The traditional fishes are often more adaptable and resilient, offering a greater variety of species that can withstand the environmental changes, which is a key for food sovereignty in the face of climate challenges. Whereas if you compare that with the culture fisheries, there is overcrowding and overproduction in intensive aquaculture, which causes ecological imbalances, leading to water pollution, eutrophication, and antibiotic resistance, habitat destruction, loss of biodiversity, and the ability of these habitats to access natural buffers against climate change. So aquaculture demands large quantities of feed, which is leading to pressure on terrestrial and marine ecosystems. The energy required to pump water, maintain tanks, and infrastructure can have larger carbon footprints. I want to stress that at the front line of climate change, the ocean, the coast, and the coastal communities are disproportionately impacted by increasing carbon dioxide emission and other green gas emission. And the main contributor is industrial aquaculture. That is the report from IUC in 2020 and FAO 2017. What about the challenges to food sovereignty? That is one of the theme of today's webinar. Food sovereignty, as we define it, refers to right of people to define their own food systems including access to and control over natural resources and food production methods. What are the issues here due to aquaculture? The loss of access to fishing grounds, marginalization of local communities from traditionally owned food system, communities dependent on common resources like rivers, lakes, and coastal zones may find these areas privatized or restricted. Oh, it's lost. Yeah, it's restricted, and then due to aquaculture development leading to reduced food security and sovereignty. Export threats reduce the availability of affordable fish for local population and control over fish production, processing, and distribution and weakening of local governance. Habitat destruction like the clearing of mangroves and wetlands, which are crucial for biodiversity and natural protection from storms, can compromise food sovereignty by diminishing the capacity of local communities to harvest food sustainability. The promotion of certain farmed species may also lead to the decline in native fish population, further reducing the ability of to access their traditional food sources, further threatening the food sovereignty by undermining the resilience of natural fish population. The reliance on few species are making the community more vulnerable to climate impacts like extreme weather, changing water temperature, or salinity levels. So, to put it in a nutshell, aquaculture can significantly impact food sovereignty, especially when industrial practices prioritize profit over local needs. The displacement of traditional fishers, environmental degradation, loss of control over food production, and the shift towards export-oriented monocultures can undermine the autonomy of communities to manage their own food systems and thus a threat to food sovereignty. In the words of Dr. Vandana Shiva, who has been consistently supporting Coastal Action Network, has been shared that the industrial culture, and that is our stand also, must be banned as it is promoted blindness to diversity, monoculture of the mind, blindness to indigenous system and indigenous knowledge, enclosure of the commons, extra activism to profit from trade in commodities, pseudo productivity of the resource intensive, pollution intensive production, social and ecological externalities which are borne by culture, borne by the nature and the local communities, putting corporate profits above people's lives and the rights of the nature. Thank you for, I appeal before this larger community and the audience and community leaders, facilitators, panelists to give a collective voice and let us stop this exploitation. Let us protect our nation. Let us protect our indigenous communities, the sea tribes, and ultimately our own right to sovereignty, food sovereignty. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Gandhi, for that. As just introduced her, Gandhi has been one of the pioneers in the battle in the subcontinent against intensive industrial aquaculture. She has been a researcher, an activist, a vocal feminist, who has taken on the battle on behalf of also the fisher women, across across the subcontinent South Asia. So we are looking at broadly.
We can't hear you, Vijayan.
Is it
No.
is
No, no.
Can you just let go
is
of the
this
mic?
any better?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
better.
Vijayan up.
Sorry about that. Okay.
Yeah.
So there are broadly about 7 issues that she faced, and as Dr. Vandana Shiva is about to join us, let me just quickly glance through them. So one set of issues are the ones that we are actually going to be dealing with in a lot of focus today, which is food sovereignty related issues. But we are also going to be dealing with issues of land, ecology, environment, and water pollution. Public health
Ji,
impacts. Public health impacts of aquaculture. You have the labor impacts. I think the Corporate Accountability Lab in the United States brought out recently a significant report on the Indian aquaculture labor malpractices. It's worth definitely looking at. We will put the link in the, Priya, kindly put the link in the chat box. It's a very important study to look at. It has looked at Andhra Pradesh, state of India. But labor practices, I mean, labor malpractices in a consistent manner in cheap labor available countries like in South Asia. You have human rights of oppressed communities that has been impacted, their land rights, their livelihood rights, all of them have been impacted over the span of last 3.5 decades because of aquaculture. We also have, as Gandhi rightly put it in the context, we also have a huge set of issues emanating from the biodiversity concerns that have been brought in by intensive industrial aquaculture that we are looking at. And last but not the least, I think increased privatization and corporatization of natural resources, which have historically belonged to communities that engage with the nature in a subsistence, sustainable fashion, is being completely replaced by a profit-mongering, exploitation-oriented, extraction-oriented, blueprint of aquaculture that is coming in now. And as Jesu Ratnam correctly pointed out, it is coming along with the larger scheme of the so-called blue economy framework, which has been pushed by the multilateral financial institutions, different government agencies, the World Bank, for example, playing a very, very lead role, which has now been almost taken over by the Food and Agricultural Organization, the FAO of the UN. Extremely concerning. And some of these being almost brought in as sustainable models, keeping in mind the depletion of fisheries in the sea. And I think that's the biggest irony that we can get, because in most of the global south, depletion of marine fisheries resources is a direct outcome of the engagement of the so-called reforms that were brought in. For example, in the Indian context, you have the Indo-Norwegian reforms, and across Asia, you have examples of how the Norwegians became literally the advocates and the promoters and the funders for the reforms in the marine engagement, especially in fisheries. So I think this is the larger challenge that we are looking at. I hope Dr. Vandana Shiva has joined us by now. I think she's taking a little bit of time. So if you try and understand this from a broad spectrum, what we are trying to do today in the webinar is to have 4 country presentations here. The larger title of the session, as you know, is the shift from capture, which is catch, hunting fisheries, to culture fisheries. Challenges in advocating food sovereignty are one of the primary ways of engaging with it. We actually have a lot of people who have done public health impacts of aquaculture, for instance, labor impact of aquaculture, for instance. We are not bringing all of those discussions on board today. We are actually trying to focus on the food sovereignty impacts. So we have 4 countries from where multiple impacts will be shared from, and that includes Bangladesh, India, Thailand, and Indonesia from the Asia Pacific region. We have 3 experts to respond to the whole thing, and they are people who.
Vijay,
Yeah.
can I stop? Sorry, Vandana has just joined. She sent a message. I think
Okay.
she's on iPhone or something. I don't know. She's joined already.
Okay. Okay. Arun, can you make, I'm just changing her name.
Yeah, there are,
Yeah, it
there are
would
two.
make her.
Yeah.
Oh, is it iPhone 13 or I changed one already?
No, no, yeah,
You,
I think.
you'll have to manage that. Um,
Yes.
and as we have known through the work of Dr. Shiva, who has been a pioneer in the whole agricultural sector, of which fisheries, dairy, all of them put together on the battle with green revolution that brought in an entire set of non-indigenous knowledge systems in a technologically oriented fashion into the practice of agriculture, and not only disturbed what had been going on historically in a traditional manner, but it actually brought in an entire set of global challenges to food sovereignty, public health, ecology, pollution, labor practices, biodiversity, all of those issues. Dr. Shiva has been thank you. Thank you very much. We got you right there. Okay. Thank you for joining us, first of all. And it's really a great honor to have you here. We have heard you in the past on subject, but I think it's that time of the year when we are also looking forward to the World Forum of Fisher People Global Assembly coming up in November. And we really wanted to bring back the whole focus on the capture to culture shift that has been promoted by corporatized and World Bank oriented agendas that have been going on. And none other than you to kind of come in and deliver us a keynote on this. Dr. Shiva is an Indian scholar and environmental activist and food sovereignty advocate. Ecofeminist and anti-globalization author. She's based in Delhi, so currently she's out, she's traveling. Dr. Shiva has written more than 20 books. She's often referred to as the Gandhi of grain. And I think someone who has put in many, many decades of work. Thank you very much, Dr. Shiva, for joining us. Over to you, Vandana. Just a request that you might have to go a little slow. We have about a 10 to 12 minutes slot for you, and I think
Sure. Yeah.
there are interpretations in about 7 languages that are going on. So just to help them, the speed will be important. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Vijayan, and thank you for Mimi, and thank you all who've organized this, because these are the most important struggles of our time, and actually for human survival forever, and the defense of the diversity of life on this earth. I think the big issue is, how do human beings conserve, regenerate the diversity that they've been given, and provide for their needs. The providing of the needs is food security. Protecting the commons of biodiversity in the waters and the oceans by fisher folk, on the land by the farmers, in the forests by the tribals. Each of them is not only meeting their needs, they are the regenerators of the earth. And that's what artisanal fishermen are. And that's why I'm here with you. Because as Vijayan mentioned, I got involved in agriculture. I'm a quantum theorist, I'm a quantum physicist. This is not my training, but I did it because 1984, Punjab, where the Green Revolution was introduced forcefully, exploded in violence. And that same year in the city of Bhopal, a pesticide plant leaked and killed thousands. According to a book I've just written, a forward to 20,000 people died in one night. Now, what happened to agriculture is what's happening to fisheries. It's the same model. In fact, we did a little film long ago when the aquaculture issue started, and it will be called The Violence of the Blue Revolution. I'm going to look for it and find it, because in the early days of the protests, and I could see the same patterns. Destroy diversity, replace it with monocultures, destroy internal input systems. The ocean supports herself. And more than that, when you have indigenous traditional aquaculture, like the Cheminketu system of Kerala. In one season, you have the fish, and the next season, you have the rice. And neither destroys the conditions for the other. They, in fact, provide the inputs for the next. But in industrial agriculture and industrial aquaculture are based on external inputs, on one commodity, which is valuable for international trade. So it shrinks the ecological base of diversity, but it shrinks the food security base by destroying the food security that comes from that diversity. You're all coastal communities. Just look into your cultures and your histories. How many kinds of fish did you eat? How many kinds of fish did you harvest? How many kinds of fish did you trade? Please map that biodiversity. That's a very big part of your work. And in agriculture, I define biodiversity-based productivity as an alternative to the yield calculus of monoculture commodities. And across the board, we can show traditional farmers produce more if you look at nutrition and biodiversity. But when you look at commodities, they seem to be producing less. Exactly the same with fishing. Artisanal fisher folk added together, the millions and millions of them, produce more diversity of fish with more nutrition and higher livelihoods. Move it to the industrial system, you have less diversity of fish, more and more external inputs with more and more pollution. I have watched the aquaculture farms. I've done studies on those aquaculture farms. They're leaving ruins along the coast. They use 10 times more fish as feed than they produce as protein. They destroy 10 times more in the true economy than the economy of trade. $1 traded in shrimp, for example, destroys $10 of the local economy of farming and fisheries. So these are the issues that are so vital to be carried out. But I would say, when I started to work on agriculture 40 years ago, the first thing I realized is we have to challenge the vocabulary. They called our seeds primitive. They called our farming methods primitive. And I took it on myself to not just save seeds. And now we are showing that our seeds produce more nutrition. They call them primitive by culture. It's a cultural colonial arrogance. But our seeds were meant for nourishing people. They've been bred for nutrition. The new seeds are bred for trade and for adding more poisons in the system. So you have herbicide-resistant crops being celebrated as an innovation. Poisoning the people is the innovation of the poison cartel. And the people driving the input industry for fisheries and the people driving the input industry for factory farming are the same businesses. So map that. I would say you need to challenge. I shifted from yield per acre to health per acre, to nutrition per acre, to the real wealth of the communities per acre, and to care per acre. And you are doing exactly that. You have care, you have intelligence, you know the ecosystems. So, I personally would say, let us not use the word capture to culture fisheries. Capture means you are all blindly just hunting. And the culture is the high culture, it's the new colonial language. That's not culture, that's war. So what is called cultural fisheries and industrial? The division is artisanal and ecological versus industrial. That's the difference. Both in the fishing in the ocean, where you have mega trawlers and the fishermen's struggle, I remember, with dear father Tom Kocheri began with resisting the trawlers. And the fishing boats would come out and just totally block the coast. The trawlers is industrial fisheries at sea. Aquaculture of the industrial kind is industrial fisheries on land. But industrial is what describes it. And what is industrial? Industrial is that which runs on fossil fuels and external energy inputs. I've just done a book called Nature of Nature, The Metabolic Disorder of Climate Change. And I'm trying to show the connection between the food system and the climate disruption, but also remind the world that the earth is living. And And communities that work with the earth, like the artisanal fishermen and traditional farmers and the tribal people of the world, are actually living according to the laws of the earth. So years ago, when I was working for the United Nations University on conflicts over resources, I remember asking Korean from Trivandrum to do the study on the conflicts in fisheries. And he's done a beautiful paper. That book is now, it was published by SAGE, Conflicts Over Resources. Unfortunately, Ecology and the Politics of Survival is what we give the title. But he has, he's mapped it at that time, but it's so much richer now. So I would suggest 3 things for you. Please name fish, the diversity of fish, and the diversity of names for sea, for water, for oceans that you have, because that is the real culture. Captive fisheries is not culture. It is the equivalent of factory farming in animals. The whole world is rising up against factory farming of animals. This is factory farming of fish. Don't use the word cultural fisheries, use the word factory farming of fish. And it uses more inputs than it produces. It generates more pollution. In fact, traditional fisheries don't. And worse, it's creating food insecurity. So all you have to do is actually don't adopt the colonizer's language. As I think Marie Angelou, the feminist, said, the master's tools will not bring down the master's house. The tools of language that have been created by colonial industrial fisheries will not bring you the clarity you need. Clarity will come from your own cultures. The diversity of the fish and the diversity of your languages. Please prepare that when you gather as World Forum of Fishermen to stand for diversity. And I can tell you this, after 50 years of being an activist and being a scientist in this field, biodiversity produces more. Of course, the monoculture of the mind cannot see it because they look at the market. They look at the 4 commodities to be treated, the 3 species of fish to be traded. But you look at nature. You look at the diversity and you create the culture of when you shouldn't fish. I've seen this in fishing communities. When breeding is taking place, you don't disturb. You have rules. Factory farming of fish, which is not cultural, it is treating nature as a war, is actually non-stop. It has no life cycle. It doesn't respect. I've seen how they produce, to get the shrimp to lay eggs for those shrimp ponds, they tear the eyes down because shrimp will not lay eggs in captivity. So they tear the eyes out, then force it to. And then in this very forced intensive farming, as factory farming, there's disease, so they have to put antibiotics. Antibiotic resistance is a huge issue in the health system. One of the biggest reasons for disease today. Link that. Please give up the word culture for this war against the earth. Call it factory farming of fish. And then the next thing you have to go to food security is not just the amount, but the nourishment. What we did in agriculture with nutrition per acre, and we could show that we can feed 2 times India's population by protecting and regenerating our biodiversity of crops. You can show it too. By protecting and regenerating the biodiversity of fish, you give healthier food. There will be studies that can be consolidated, but for sure, like we've done, traditional varieties called primitive, we said, no, they are the real varieties. And now we are finding that 200% more nutrition. If you take the fish you harvest and compare it to the fish being produced in the factory farm, maybe you have to collect some money to send it to a lab. Just send it to a lab. Artisanal fish and factory farm fish, and look at the nutrition and the poisons in it. And let that be what you announce in the World Fisher Forum's culture. There's so much to do together. You've asked for advocacy. Yeah, the Human Rights Forum, but it's not a treaty, It's a forum. But you have a biodiversity convention. I had a big role in shaping that biodiversity convention on biology. They're meeting in Cali. This year, the meeting in Colombia, because of what Colombia has lived through and the fact that they have a government that cares, they've declared the theme of this meeting as peace with the earth. You all are leaders in making peace with the earth, where the ocean and the land meet in that very, very precious ecosystem. You know how to make peace with the earth. So even if no one is going, but I'm sure there will be people from Latin America, from the forum, if you prepare a common declaration that you are biodiversity conservers and regenerators, don't let them call you hunters. Just don't let them call you hunters. You are biodiversity conservers and regenerators and providers of healthy food to people. Prepare a common draft and let it go to Kali. Or even if nobody goes, put it out on your media. Put it on your media, change the discourse. So the convention is there for you. The ocean heating as part of climate change is becoming a big issue. Come into that debate. Yes, the human rights debate, but most importantly, your human rights is not a pathetic right of begging anyone. You are the holders of the future. 80% of the biodiversity on this planet is where indigenous people are. Wherever the so-called development goes, wherever corporations go, they destroy the biodiversity. Factory farming of fish is destruction of biodiversity, both diversity of the land as well as the diversity of the fish. First of all, they harvest and then they pour the pollution back and kill fish where they're breeding. They're killing the fish with their pollution and then antibiotic resistance everywhere. There is so much literature available, but you have to generate more. The biodiversity of your cultures, the biodiversity of your ways and techniques, and the biodiversity of the ocean and the land. Let them meet. That meeting will be the biggest force of change. And just be proud of what you do, because you do the most important work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Shiva. Vandana Di, आज आपने तो एकदम you've taken us to a very different league in both semantics of this conversation, and I can see constantly, young researcher friends like Suzanne or Jones or myself, all of us constantly, continuously taking notes on what you are saying, because what you said from both your experience of having fought them. I remember the time when you and Tom, Hare Krishna, all of you were in Seattle together to fight the WTO battle. We still have, I would request everyone to please go back and check in YouTube for the Seattle videos of Dr. Shiva, Thomas Kocheri, Hare Krishna Devnath, all of them. It's a fantastic beginnings of what she said today about one, we need to culturally fight this. We need to fight this language itself. We need to stop them from calling us as primitive hunters, uncouth, uncultured barbarians who need to be, reformed and needs to be given new tools. Our history, our artisanal engagement, our traditional wisdom, all of this has to form the foundations of our language. She is categoric about that. And she says that from the experience in agriculture, we have to make sure that we start calling them what they are. Call the spade a spade is Dr. Shiva's message. She has said that, what is, very clearly, factory farming of seafood, factory farming of fish needs to be called that and not as culture fisheries. And let us also not call ourselves as capture fisheries. We are the historical, artisanal, traditional, wisdom-holding communities that have sustained and has done sustainable fishing over thousands of years. And I think that entire oceanic civilizational framework that she has brought in, let that be our strength today as we take on the day. Thank you very much, Dr. Vandana, for joining us. I know that you have been in a very, very tight spot to be coming.
In fact, I have to hold a class now, and I left home early to be able to make it for 10. But I'm so glad I was able to join you in any time, any service I can offer. do let me know. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
very, very
Vandana ji,
much.
for joining.
I hope we can actually just summarize all the comments that are coming up in the chat box here. Wonderful appreciation and gratitude to Dr. Vandana for having set a tone for this webinar itself. We are an hour into the program. I do not want to take any more time, but I think let us clearly remember the whole question of diversity of fish and diversity of languages that Dr. Vandana brought in. Let that be the spirit of the World Forum of Fisher People General Assembly this time. I hope Herman and all of you, the leadership within WFFP, are listening to this. I think this being a civilizational cultural battle with the aggressors and the exploiters is very, very clear. Michael is here already. Michael has been a long-term supporter of many of these concerns. However, Michael also today holds as the UN Special Rapporteur on Right to Food. So let us actually get to the country presentations, which is actually the key of where we are coming in from. As we said, we have 4 country presentations. I repeatedly would request everyone to stick to time. We have done, I'm so sorry, I'm going too fast, I'm told by the interpreters. We have 4 country presentations today. And in all the 4 country presentations, the brief has been very clear about bringing forth the issues that communities have been finding from the traditional fishing practices to this promoted industrial aquaculture framework, which Dr. Shiva referred to as the farming, the corporate farming, the factory farming of fish. So I think that is where all these country presentations are going to focus on. Then we will have some of the experts come in. We have Dr. Pola, Satisabal, Mr. Siddharth Chakravarti, Jones, Spartacus, all of them who have been co-travelers of the fisheries movement, the fishers movement, but at the same time also people who have done significant work in their own fields in academic research. Moving into the presentations, I would want to bring in Mohammad Zahidul Islam. Zahid is representing the coast from Bangladesh, historically very important organization that has done consistent work in Bangladesh and in South Asia and has been part of the World Forum of Fisher People. Zahid, you have about 10 to 12 minutes. Let's stick to that. Zahid, over to you.
So, good morning, everyone from Bangladesh. And thank you, as well as thank you, Mr. Vijayan, and the other organizers for giving me an opportunity to talk in this webinar. After hearing after hearing the speech from the great Dr. Vandana Shiva, I would like to, it makes me a little bit confused that what I'm talking right now. But as I'm taking preparation, I think I can have the similar issues as the webinar thing. So, today's presentation is the unplanned shift from the capture to culture fisheries and the challenges we are facing in advancing the food sovereignty in Bangladesh. Before starting to the presentation, I'd like to give some small scenario of country context. Actually, you know that Bangladesh is a country of huge population. We have more than 119 million people in our country, and we have a very small land. Very small land to have very small land. That's why this is our two or three slides of mine will be focusing on that why this transition from capture to culture fisheries is within the planet interventions is needed for our country. if you see the overview of the fisheries in Bangladesh, you will find that I don't want to go to other points, just two, that the traditional capture fisheries, capture fisheries have been a major part of rural livelihood, especially for small scale fishers. You know that we have more than 16, or in total 17 coastal districts in Bangladesh, and most of the coastal peoples, I say the rural peoples who lived in the coastal lines, are involved with fishing. So we have approximately more than 0.2 million households. It's not about human being, it's these households who are actually dependent on the marine fisheries activities. So without them, without addressing them properly, food sovereignty in Bangladesh cannot be addressed, I believe. So this is a scenario. You'll see that last 5 years contribution also in the right part of my at my picture, and also you'll see the key contributor of the growth of Bangladeshi economy, the fisheries sector. You see that fisheries sector alone have the contribution to our gross development product, that's called GDP, 2.41%. And a total of 12 million people are engaged with, involved with this process directly or indirectly. And if you see the breakdown of the fish production, that's the point. That's the point I want to. I request you to focus on it. I focus that right now we have more percentage on culture fisheries, like 57.29%. And among this percentage, from the pond culture only, we have the contribution is 45.53% alone. And the rest is from capture and the marine fisheries. This report is very recent. This report is very recent. It is from the, wait a minute, pardon me, please. Sorry, and you see that over the last 10 years, the average growth of the growth rate of this sector has been around 6.19%. So definitely, it is one of the key contributors of the growth of Bangladesh economy. So now, if you want to go to the fish consumption patterns in Bangladesh, you will see that fish is a major protein source and providing 60% of the animal protein. Before going to the next part, point, I would like to add one thing about the key contributor part for our fisheries sector. You know that BFRI, Bangladesh Fisheries Research Institute, they have stated in a report that it is 29 distinct fisheries they are able to bring back 29 distinct species of fish. So they also, in a sense, I can say that they also help to bring back the diversity of the different species of or availability of different species of fishes in the market. So now in this slide, I want to go to the next point. It is that in our country, the per capita fish consumption is 75.5 grams. The protein against the demand of 63 gram. So still the people of our country traditionally are heavily dependent on riverine and coastal capture fisheries. So I would like to, this slide is belongs to the importance of the capture fisheries. You see that in Bangladesh, around 3.9 million hectares of land are encompassed with the diverse areas such as the Beel River, estuarine, Kaptai Lake, and different floodplain areas. That is fully used for the capture fisheries. And there are other, as Dr. Vandana Shiva said, yes, the capture fisheries are the main ecologically sustainable and have low input cost. So this slide is for the importance of culture fisheries. I already mentioned some of them, some of the issue regarding why it is looking important, but the main focus point, it should be planned. It should be in a planned way, not in a factoritized way, not in a privatized way, but it should be in a planned way to do the culture fisheries in Bangladesh to ensure the fish protein for the common people, for all. You see that there are many issues I have been presenting here. I don't want to go to each of them because of the increasing benefits of having cultural fisheries. The southern part of our country, the west southern part of our country, it is Satkira, Khulna, Bagherat. Many shrimp farmings are there. They are using advanced technologies. They're and more private investments are there because of producing more shrimps, because shrimps is already proven already proven a huge economical staple. So that's why people living there are more invest on, and also the private organizations and other farms are invest on the fisheries like shrimp and other fish. So I already mentioned in here that tilapia, pangasius, and shrimp. These are the main product for the main fishes that people are focusing on. There are other parts of our country, like Mymensingh these are the bigger districts there. People are more focused on cultural fisheries and the fishes are like their rui, katla, and I already mentioned about the tilapia, that because of their rapid growth and for bigger profit, people are more interested to invest in these fisheries, this cultural fisheries sector. So what I'd like to say about the now these slides are for the challenges and way forward. What is the challenges regarding captured fishes we found in Bangladesh? You see that for the captured fisheries, the overfishing is a great problem. What he said, Mr. Vijay, we have heard from Gandhimati ji, we have heard from Mr. Vijay, and we have heard from Dr. Vandana that overfishing, population pollution, sea pollution, water pollution, habitat degradation, and depletion of fish stocks is happening. In a research, it is said. In a research, is said. I have a okay. In a research, we found that about 2,000 fish fry and larvae of fin fishes are discarded while catching a single shrimp post larva. And another report is said that 10 kg of fish fry and shrimp post larva are damaged while collecting every 1 kg of shrimp in the Sundarban region. So this is a very following the data, you see that how these are doing, and for the fishers, for the smaller scale fishers, I would like to say that because of not having enough resources, the financial institutions like banks and other institutions, they don't give them the proper for the formal credit facilities. They don't receive formal credit facilities from them because of having less collaterals or sometimes having no collaterals. So this is also challenges who are dependent on the capture of fisheries like the small scale fishers. And another point I'd like to mention that this is their comfort zone. They are fully dependent of the traditional method of fishing, though they have lack of finance. That's why they are not able to buy the mechanized boats or even hire the mechanized boats for fishing, for riverine fishing. And also there is climate change everywhere. Climate change is happening. Bangladesh is the 7th climate disaster prone country in the world. So this is also a great impact on capture fisheries sector, we believe. What is the challenges of culture fisheries? I already mentioned that, and also there are several presentations from Gandhamati ji, and also Dr. Vandana also mentioned that huge bycatch is a strong challenge regarding the culture of regarding the fisheries sector, and also the for the culture fisheries, it is very harmful for ecology because most of the people who are engaged in fisheries sector, particularly in the western and southern part of our countries, apart from the administration, they are not habituated or not informed about the groundwater stress. Like that I already mentioned here, that you find that stress on groundwater from brackish water salinity led to decreased groundwater levels and salinization. So it is happening there. It is happening there. Lands are becoming barren. Other agriculture commodities are less produced there because of salinized. And also you see that factoritized and privatized housing. It is already mentioned there. And also, the most shocking point is that very close to the mangrove forest on those particular areas, there are several the shrimp farms are there. So this is also also alarming situation is the destruction of the mangrove ecosystem out there. And I already mentioned about the saltwater intrusions. It is happening. It is happening. So through my discussions, these issues already came. That is food insecurity, because as the smaller scale fishers, lack of finance, lack of experience. Yes, Mr. Vijan, I am seeing you. I will be completing within 2 minutes. Okay. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Okay. That is because of these smaller scale fishers, they are nowhere to go. Like they don't have finance, they don't have experience. They have experience, but they don't have training. They don't have that proper capacity to use the mechanized boats. Though they have the capacity, they don't have the finance to take the chances of having advanced mechanization. So that's why they're in a place. They are in a place of food insecurity, but also they're having lack of the fundamental rights they're enjoying. And this is also becoming them marginalized, both socially and economically. So I don't want to. I will share the presentation in the chat box. I just want to share two more slides. I want to skip this slide. I hope it will be okay with the participants. So how do you balance this capture and culture fisheries? In my small thinking and a small review from different researchers, I found that these issues can be addressed, and also this type of webinar, this type of learning exchange and raising voice collectively, it also important to for the sake of the small scale farmers we have in our country and also across the world. The most and foremost is that the policy, because the government is earning revenue, is earning huge amount of benefits from economic benefits from the culture of fisheries like shrimp farming and other farming, but it has to be done in an integrated way. It has to be done in a sustainable managing way. So and alternative livelihoods have to be introduced and promoted for the small scale fishers. In Bangladesh, we Coast Foundation also we have some projects. We are training them. We are also giving them we are also trying to them to with dignified alternative livelihoods. All the issues are already I discussed, but I want to share the last three of the second row. That is fishers cooperative formation, that is coordination on fishing ban, and also the small scale fishers should be exempted from fishing bans due to their minimal environmental impact. So yes, so we are talking about the long-term impact. We are talking about the future. But what about now? What about now? How they will survive right now? So in Bangladesh, you know that the transboundary we have with Myanmar, India, the territorial boundaries we have, the fishing bans. You know, everybody we know that 63 bans just in July. The 63 ban period was closed in July 20. But for Bangladesh, it was July 20. But for India, it was not. It was 7 or 10 days earlier than that. So there should be a coordination about this fishing ban, because the benefits of this fishing ban also came to the small scale fishers. They also came to the river for fishing. During the fishing ban, they didn't also went to the go to the river, because there is strong surveillance by the fishers, by the border, by the the law enforcing agencies. So I think it is also, along with other policy advocacy issues, these issues should also be considered. And also, as these small scale fishers, they are very low. Their environmental impact is very low. I'd like to request all of the WFAP and CAN decision makers and the seniors to also consider these two issues, to think about how to accommodate these two issues in the discussion table. And lastly, fishing cooperative. For promoting for a collective voice, they should have a fishers cooperative at the community level, at the very local level. These leaders, the leaders from the cooperative, will be the leader of these small scale fishers. You know, the small scale fishers, they don't have the capacity, or even they are feeling shy to talk with the rich people or with the people. So if we create fishers cooperative, or we think about the concept, then there will be at least someone who will be talking for them, for their benefit, for their rights. So thank you, everyone. Thank you
Thank
for
you
the
very much.
patience.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's important to hear from you. It's important that we actually, I mean, here, I didn't want to actually interrupt because of the flow, because you actually tried to put together all the 5 different segments of both impacts, the negative impacts, the positive, these things, as well as you had a whole set of recommendations. Some of them in different countries, and that's actually the reason why we should have this conversation across countries. You brought in the whole bilateral issues between countries. You brought in the question of balancing. Now, in some of our countries, balancing itself has become quite a difficult thing because it is not traditional pisciculture or aquaculture that Dr. Vandana spoke about that is being followed now. It is a complete aggressive, takeover, a grabbing of land that has been happening in the name of industrial aquaculture. So the factory farming is taking its own aggressive course now. We will move to the next presentation that is from Thailand, from the Sustainable Development Foundation and the Traditional Thai Fish Workers Union. Mr. Praveen Julpakde. Praveen will be making the presentation from Thailand. We are actually a little late because any of our speakers take a little longer, we then end up having lesser time for others. So we request that all of you try and stick to the time. We realize that there is actually a lot of ground to be covered in this, but we have all your presentations. We are hoping that at the end of this, we will bring out a comprehensive report on all the 3 or 4 different issues that we are dealing with within these webinars, and will be making them as advocacy tools for the World Forum General Assembly 8 in Brazil. Over to you, Praveen.
คุณประ
สวัส
วี
ดี
ณ
ครับ
ค่ะ
เชิญพี่ติ๋วก่อนครับ
ติ๊กเอาเลยค่ะ
Yeah, all the friends who wants to listen in English, please shift to the English channel, and you could hear Praveen in English.
สวัสดีผู้เข้าร่วมประชุมสัมมนาท่านนะครับ ก็จะนำเสนอกรณีตัวอย่างการเพาะเลี้ยงที่จังหวัดสุราษฎร์ธานีที่มีผลกระทบต่อพี่น้องประมงพื้นบ้านในระดับจังหวัดนะครับ ขออนุญาตขึ้นสไลด์แรกนะครับโอเคในพื้นที่จังหวัดสุราษฎร์ธานีนี่มีจำนวนประชากรที่เป็นชุมชนประมงชายฝั่งทั้งหมดนะครับ 152,675 คนหรือ 74,614 ครัวเรือนซึ่งทั้งหมดนี้นี่ก็จะมีส่วนเกี่ยวข้องกับกลุ่มประมงพื้นบ้านนะครับที่หาอยู่หากินในบริเวณชายฝั่งกลุ่มประมงพื้นบ้านนี่ก็จะแยกออกเป็น3 กลุ่มใหญ่ๆนะครับกลุ่มแรกก็คือกลุ่มที่มีเรือประมงและมีเครื่องมือประมงกลุ่มที่2ก็จะเป็นกลุ่มที่มีเครื่องมือประมงแต่ไม่มีเรือประมงจะใช้แรงงานร่วมกับกลุ่มที่มีเรือประมงนะครับแล้วก็กลุ่มที่3นี่จะไม่มีเครื่องมือประมงและไม่มีเรือประมงทำอาหารกินอยู่ในบริเวณชายฝั่งทะเลนะครับในพื้นที่อ่าวบ้านดอนซึ่งในพื้นที่อ่าวบ้านดอนเนี่ยนะครับจะมีการกำหนดเขตประมงพื้นบ้านตามกฎหมายก็คือ3 ไมล์ทะเลนะครับตลอดแนวชายฝั่งยกเว้นพื้นที่เกาะนะครับแต่ในขณะเดียวกันเนี่ยพื้นที่ทะเลที่พี่น้องใช้ประโยชน์ร่วมกันมีการอนุญาต ให้เพาะเลี้ยงสัตว์น้ำนะครับโดยเฉพาะหอยชนิดต่างๆในพื้นที่อ่าวบ้านดอนนี่มีการเพาะเลี้ยงหอยแครงหอยนางรมหอยแมงภู่นะครับซึ่งก่อนหน้านี้10 กว่าปีนี่มีการอนุญาตให้ผู้ประกอบการเพาะเลี้ยงนะครับทำการเพาะเลี้ยงในพื้นที่ชายฝั่งทะเลนี่29,885 ไร่นะครับแต่ต่อมาจะมีการอนุญาตพื้นที่เพิ่มเติมนะครับไปประมาณเกือบ 30,000 ไร่นะครับรวมกันแล้วในพื้นที่เพาะเลี้ยงชายฝั่งทะเลที่เป็นที่ทำการประมงของพี่น้องประมงพื้นบ้านเนี่ยประมาณ 50,000 ไร่นะครับคิดเป็นเปอร์เซ็นต์ก็ประมาณ 40% ของพื้นที่จับสัตว์น้ำของพี่น้องประมงพื้นบ้านในพื้นที่อ่าวบันดอนทั้งหมดนะครับประมาณ 200,000 กว่าไร่นะครับนี่ก็จะเป็นสิ่งที่มีผลกระทบกับพี่น้องประมงพื้นบ้านมากนะครับที่ในภาพเราเห็นเป็นเหลี่ยมๆนะครับสีม่วงที่มีขอบเส้นสีม่วงเนี่ยตรงนี้ก็จะเป็นพื้นที่อนุญาตให้มีการเพาะเลี้ยงสัตว์น้ำในทะเลซึ่งเป็นพื้นที่สาธารณสมบัติของแผ่นดินนะครับโดยส่วนใหญ่พื้นที่อนุญาตให้มีการเพาะเลี้ยงนี่นะครับก็เหมือนกับพื้นที่เหล่านั้นนี่ให้เอกชนเข้าไปครอบครองเพาะเลี้ยงสัตว์น้ำมีการเลี้ยงหอยอย่างเดียวนะครับซึ่งในพื้นที่ที่มีการอนุญาตเพาะเลี้ยงนี่จะไม่สามารถให้พี่น้องประมงพื้นบ้านเนี่ยเข้าไปทำการประมงได้นะครับนี่เป็นปัญหามากที่สุดนะครับเพราะฉะนั้นถ้าเกิดเราดูปัญหาผลกระทบจากการเพาะเลี้ยงสัตว์น้ำที่มีต่อกลุ่มประมงพื้นบ้านเนี่ยก็คือการบุกรุกของกลุ่มคนที่เพาะเลี้ยงสัตว์น้ำนะครับนอกเหนือพื้นที่อนุญาตที่ไม่ชอบด้วยกฎหมายนะครับทำให้พื้นที่สาธารณะเหล่านั้นเนี่ยเป็นของส่วนตัวไปนะครับเป็นการละเมิดสิทธิของพี่น้องประมงพื้นบ้านที่เขาไม่สามารถเข้าไปทำการประมงพื้นบ้านได้นะครับซึ่งในการจัดการทรัพยากรระหว่างผู้เพาะเลี้ยงสัตว์น้ำนะครับกับพี่น้องประมงพื้นบ้านเนี่ยจะสังเกตได้ว่าไม่มีความเป็นธรรมในการจัดการทรัพยากรนะครับเพราะว่าในพื้นที่ประมาณ 50,000 ไร่เนี่ยคนที่มีสิทธิเข้าไปใช้ประโยชน์ในพื้นที่นั้นนะครับไม่เกิน300 ครอบครัวนะครับกับพี่น้องประมงพื้นบ้านทั้งหมดเนี่ย 74,600 กว่าครอบครัวนี่เป็นการละเมิดสิทธิของคนส่วนใหญ่ที่ประกอบอาชีพประมงพื้นบ้านอย่างชัดเจนนะครับประเด็นที่3พี่น้องประมงพื้นบ้านเมื่อไม่มีที่ทำการประมงในทะเลเนี่ยก็จะขาดรายได้จากการยังชีพนะครับทำให้พี่น้องประมงนี่มีการเกิดปัญหาความยากจนขึ้นมานะครับความไม่มั่นคงทางอาหารนี่จะตามมาอีกเยอะแยะมากมายนะครับทำให้หลายคนนี่ต้องหยุดประกอบอาชีพประมงนะครับไปเป็นลูกจ้างในชุมชนเมืองหรือในภาคอุตสาหกรรมนะครับและก็ประเด็นสุดท้ายมันจะส่งผลกระทบต่อความไม่มั่นคงทางอาหารนะครับเพราะว่าในการทำประมงทะเลเนี่ยนะครับเวลาพี่น้องไปจับสัตว์น้ำก็จะมีสัตว์น้ำอย่างหลากหลายเครื่องมือแต่ละชนิดก็จะเลือกจับสัตว์น้ำเฉพาะชนิดแล้วก็เป็นฤดูกาลนะครับแต่พอ มีการเพาะเลี้ยงสัตว์น้ำนี่ก็จะมีสัตว์น้ำเฉพาะหอยอย่างเดียวนะครับมีหอยแครงหอยแมงภู่แล้วก็หอยนางรมนี่คือจะเป็นปัญหาใหญ่นะครับในการเพาะเลี้ยงสัตว์น้ำนี่ก็จะครอบคลุมทุกอำเภอนะครับที่อยู่ในพื้นที่อ่าวบ้านดอนของจังหวัดสุราษฎร์ธานีตั้งแต่อำเภอชัยยาอำเภอพุนพินอำเภอท่าฉางอำเภอเมืองอำเภอกาญจนดิตและอำเภอดอนสักนะครับ ซึ่งในพื้นที่ทุกอำเภอเหล่านี้เนี่ยก็จะมีพี่น้องประมงพื้นบ้านอยู่โดยรอบนะครับ แล้วก็ที่สำคัญในพื้นที่อนุญาตเพาะเลี้ยงสัตว์น้ำชายฝั่งนี่ก็จะเป็นพื้นที่ทำกินของพี่น้องประมงพื้นบ้านเนื่องจากในบางแปลงที่ได้รับอนุญาตนี่ก็จะอยู่ติดกับป่าชายเลนห่างจากป่าชายเลนไม่เกิน100 เมตรนะครับบางแปลงก็จะห่างจากป่าชายเลนประมาณ500 เมตรนะครับจะมีผลกระทบกับพี่น้องประมงพื้นบ้านเป็นอย่างมากเลยนะครับซึ่งถ้าเกิดเราดูเรื่องของการบริหารจัดการทรัพยากรอย่างยั่งยืนนะครับตามแนวการพัฒนาอย่างยั่งยืนที่ชุมชนประมงพื้นบ้านในพื้นที่อ่าวบ้านดอนเนี่ยได้ร่วมกันดำเนินการที่ผ่านมานะครับในตลอดระยะเวลา10 กว่าปีนะครับก็มองถึงเรื่องของความสมบูรณ์ของทรัพยากรนะครับความหลากหลายทางชีวภาพกระบวนการมีส่วนร่วมของพี่น้องประมงพื้นบ้านนะครับแล้วก็การจัดการเศรษฐกิจบนฐานความหลากหลายทางชีวภาพหรือที่เราเรียกว่าเศรษฐกิจสีฟ้าเศรษฐกิจสีน้ำเงินนะครับใน3 ส่วนนี้เนี่ยถ้าเกิดเรามองในเรื่องของการจัดการทรัพยากรเนี่ยนะครับเรื่องความยั่งยืนของผลผลิตสัตว์น้ำตอนนี้ในพื้นที่พี่น้องก็ทำเรื่องของการฟื้นฟูทรัพยากรเช่นการทำบ้านปลาการทำธนาคารปูการกำหนดกฎระเบียบกติกาชุมชนถึงการใช้ขนาดตาอ้วนนะครับที่ไม่จับสัตว์น้ำขนาดเล็กส่วนที่2ก็คือสังคมนะครับที่ดำเนินการในเรื่องของความมั่นคงทางอาหารทางอาชีพนะครับมีการจัดตั้งกองทุนสำหรับกลุ่มพี่น้องประมงพื้นบ้านให้สามารถเข้าถึงทุนในระดับพื้นที่ได้นะครับเข้าถึงได้ง่ายมีความตระหนักและกระบวนการมีส่วนร่วมทั้งผู้หญิงผู้ชายนะครับโดยเฉพาะในเรื่องของการจัดการการเงินในระดับกลุ่มระดับครัวเรือนเนี่ยก็จะเป็นบทบาทของผู้หญิงการจัดการกติกาในการบริหารจัดการสัตว์น้ำเนี่ยก็จะเป็นบทบาทของผู้หญิงนะครับการสร้างความเสมอภาคนะครับการจัดการเรื่องการเพิ่มมูลค่าของสัตว์น้ำเพื่อจัดการคุณภาพชีวิตที่ดีของพี่น้องประมงพื้นบ้านส่วนในเรื่องของเศรษฐกิจก็จะเชื่อมโยงกับเรื่องของการจัดการทรัพยากรและสังคมนะครับเพิ่มมูลค่าของสัตว์น้ำเพื่อสร้างรายได้ที่เพิ่มขึ้นนะครับกองทุนเนี่ยสามารถจัดการหนี้สินระดับครัวเรือนได้นะครับเข้าถึงทุนได้ง่ายและที่สำคัญมีการกระจายผลประโยชน์อย่างเป็นธรรมในกลุ่มสมาชิกนะครับนี่ก็เป็นประเด็นที่มาร่วมแลกเปลี่ยนนะครับกับพี่น้องเครือข่ายประมงพื้นบ้านนะครับขอบคุณมากครับหรือพี่ติ๋วพี่เล็กจะมีอะไรเพิ่มเติมก็ขอเรียนเชิญนะครับสวัสดีครับ
Sudhiha, thank you very much indeed, Praveen.
there is a woman Fisher would add a little bit before we ending.
Okay.
เล็กเชิญเลยค่ะ เล็กเปิดได้เปล่าเล็ก so I think leg is the woman Fisher. He might she
actually
might not be
in the
able
side channel.
to open the sound, but then I just would like to add up that the Thai policy it had been very much promoting aquaculture. The case presented had already demonstrated that small-scale fisher have lost their territory for fishing. It caused a lot of problems. And in this area, it had been really create a lot of conflict between small-scale fishers and commercial fishers, because the one who put investment in aquaculture are not the small-scale fisher. Small-scale fisher, they are not able to have capital enough to spend 8 months, 7 months in order to earn income, because they expect to get income every day. And then it really become a very big problem. However, why we have so many lessons learned of negative impact to not only the coastal resources, it have create negative impact on socio-economic and really, create an unsafe situation to small-scale fisher. But then the government keep on expanding. Many areas that had not been used for aquaculture in the same area that the problem had been occur, had been the government had allocate more area for aquaculture. So I think this is the issue that alarming a crisis to small scale fisher. So I hope that with a network, we really have to strengthen the capacity to really recall for the fair policy development of what they concern is more of productivity and income. They're not really concerned who would be the one who produced the fish. So I think this is something that is happening in Thailand, and it is really one of major issue that Thailand are facing. So that would be something that we would like to share. Thank you very much for everyone.
Thank you very much, Ravdi. Ravdi has been one of the longest standing women comrades from Thailand who's heading the SDF and has been globally part of the WFP for many years and decades now. So she's added to the whole perspective. Unfortunately, the fisher woman comrade from Thailand could not speak. I think she had to shift between the interpretation channels to come into the main channel to speak. So I think that there was some issue. Arun, could you also make Susan co-host so that she can turn her video on as well?
Yes.
We are moving to the next presentation. As we said, we are on this entire journey of country presentations. 2 of them are done. Bangladesh and Thailand have been done. Bangladesh done by Mohammed Sahidul, and Thailand by Praveen, with inputs additionally from Comrade Ravdi. We are moving to the India presentations. We have 2 quick presentations. One from the southern state of Andhra Pradesh, and the other from Tamil Nadu, again a southern state in India. The Andhra Pradesh presentation is going to be done by Comrade Lakshmi. Lakshmi is the General Secretary of the Andhra Pradesh Traditional Fish Workers Union, and an National Executive Committee member of National Fish Workers Forum. And Pradeep Ilangovan is associated with Sneha and the Coastal Action Network in Tamil Nadu. Pradeep has been a young researcher, someone who's coming with a geologist background, but someone who has actually been working with the community in establishing land rights, helping with community-based research with the fishing communities in Tamil Nadu. Lakshmi Garu,
हेलो नमस्ते।
आपका समय अभी शुरू करता है। हम लोगों को क्योंकि भारत से 2 प्रेजेंटेशन है, तो इसलिए समय का थोड़ा ध्यान रखिएगा।
जी हाँ ओके
बोलिए।
अभी बोलिए, अभी बोलेगा नहीं तो बाद में बोलेगा।
आप अभी बोलिए।
हेलो
आपका शुरू कर लेते हैं, आपसे
अभी
शुरू करते हैं,
तेलुगु में
फिर प्रदीप भाई।
तेलुगु में बात करती हूँ।
जी, Telugu
तेलुगु में
interpreter
बात
needs to be speaking in the English channel. So those who want to listen in English, kindly shift to the English channel. Lakshmi will be speaking in Telugu. Yes, you are audible. Yeah, that's fine.
Lakshmi Akka, you can start.
అందరికీ నమస్కారం అండి। నేను ఇప్పుడు మాట్లాడుతున్నది 975 కిలోమీటర్లు ఉన్న ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్ సముద్ర తీరం కోసం మాట్లాడుతున్నానండి। ఇప్పుడు మన 975 కిలోమీటర్లు ఉన్న సముద్ర తీర జాతి కంపెనీలకి బీచ్ రోడ్లకి తీసుకుంటున్నారండి। దాని వలన ఏమవుతుందంటే చిన్న సన్నకారు మత్స్యకారులు చాలా జీవనోపాధి నష్టపోతుందండి। సముద్రానికి వెళ్ళినా సరే చేపలు దొరకక ఉత్పత్తి లేదండి। ఈ ఒక 975 కిలోమీటర్ల తీరంలో ఉన్న సముద్ర తీరంలోని మడ అడవులు, ఇసుక దెబ్బలు మొత్తం కూడా నాశనం అయిపోయాయండి। ఈ ఒక కంపెనీల బహుళ జాతి కంపెనీల వలన, ఈ ఒక రోడ్ల వలన, బీచ్ రోడ్ల వలన, టూరిజం డెవలప్మెంట్ వలన, అక్వాకల్చర్ వలన కూడా ఈ ఒక మడ అడవులు, ఇసుక దెబ్బలు పూర్తిగా కూడా నాశనం అయిపోయాయండి। దీని వలన మత్స్యకారులు నష్టపోయే పరిస్థితి ఈ రోజు ఏర్పడుతుందండి। ఇప్పుడు కేంద్ర రాష్ట్ర ప్రభుత్వాలు ఎక్కువ అక్వాకల్చర్ కోసమే మగ్గు చూపుతున్నారే తప్ప సముద్రం తీరంలో ఉన్న మత్స్యకారుల కోసం, సముద్రంలో సంపద కోసం ఎప్పుడు కూడా ఆలోచించటం లేదండి। దీని వలన ఏమవుతుందంటే ఈ అక్వాకల్చర్లు పెట్టడం వలన ఈ రసాయన ఈ రొయ్యలు పెంపక కేంద్రాలు ఈ రొయ్యలు ఎక్కువ ఉత్పత్తి కోసం రసాయనాలు కలుపుతున్నారండి। ఆ రసాయనాలు కలిపి ఆ ఒక పొల్యూషన్ ఆ నీళ్ళన్నీ కూడా సముద్రంలోకి వదిలేస్తున్నారు। దాని వలన చేపలు కొద్ది గొప్ప ఉన్న చేపలు కూడా నష్టపోయే పరిస్థితి ఉందండి, నష్టపోతున్నారు। దీని వలన ఏమవుతుందంటే చాలా మంది మన మత్స్యకారులు ఇతర రాష్ట్రాలకి వలసకి వెళ్ళిపోయే పరిస్థితి ఏర్పడుతుందండి। సంవత్సరానికి 10 నెలలు వలసకు వెళ్ళిపోయి 1 నెల మాత్రమే ఊర్లోకి వస్తున్నారండి। ఈ చేప ఉత్పత్తి తగ్గిపోవడం వలన ఇతర దేశాలకి వెళ్ళిపోతున్నారు, వలసకి వెళ్ళిపోతున్నారు। కాబట్టి అక్వాకల్చర్లు చాలా ప్రమాదకరమైన పరిస్థితి ఈ రోజు ఏర్పడుతుందండి। గ్రామంలోని చూసుకుంటే గనక ఈ ఒక అక్వాకల్చర్లు పెట్టడం వలన ఒక త్రాగటానికి నీళ్లు కూడా ఉప్పు నీరే వస్తుందండి। నీళ్లు కొనుక్కొని త్రాగటానికి, వండుకోవడానికి ఈ రోజు మత్స్యకారుల పరిస్థితి నీళ్లు కొనుక్కునే పరిస్థితి ఏర్పడిందండి. ఎక్కువ ఈ రొయ్యలు మన మత్స్యకారులకు రొయ్యల పెంపకాల కేంద్రాల్లో కూడా మత్స్యకారులే పనికి ఉంటున్నారు. వాళ్ళు పనిలో పెట్టుకుంటున్నారండి. వాళ్ళకి రొయ్యలు మేతకి మగవాళ్ళు, రొయ్యలు క్లీన్ చేయడానికి, ఆ వాటర్ అంతా పారేయడానికి ఆడవాళ్ళని పెట్టుకుంటున్నారండి. ఎందువలనంటే ఈ ఒక సముద్రం తీరం ప్రాంతాల్లో సముద్రంలో చేప దొరకక ఈ అక్వాకల్చర్లు ఎక్కువైపోయి ఈ ఒక ప్రమాదమైన పరిస్థితి ఈ రోజు ఏర్పడిందండి. అందువలన ఈ తీర ప్రాంత భూములన్నీ కూడా ఫారెస్ట్లో భూములన్నీ కూడా మత్స్యకారులకి చెందినవండివి. మత్స్యకారులకే చెందాలి. తీరంలోని ఉన్న తీరం సముద్ర తీరంలో ఉన్న ఫారెస్ట్ భూములు కూడా మత్స్యకారులకి ఇవ్వాలని ఆ నేషనల్ ఫిష్ వర్కర్స్ ఫార్మ్ యూనియన్, ట్రెడిషనల్ ఫిష్ వర్కర్స్ యూనియన్ ఎప్పటి నుంచో కూడా పోరాటం చేస్తూ వస్తూ ఉందండి. కానీ ఏమీ కూడా కేంద్ర రాష్ట్ర ప్రభుత్వాలు పట్టించుకోలేదండి. మన సముద్రం తీరం మన హక్కు, జీవించే మన హక్కు అండి. సముద్రం తీరం కూడా మన హక్కు కాబట్టి మత్స్యకారులు చాలా నష్టపోయే పరిస్థితి ఈ అక్వాకల్చర్ల వల్ల చాలా నష్టపోతున్నారండి. దీని వలన ఏంటంటే పిల్లలు చదువులకి వాళ్ళు ఇంట్లో చాలా దీనాయతమైన పరిస్థితి ఏర్పడుతుందండి. దానివల్ల ఏంటంటే ఈ ఈ రొయ్యలు ఉత్పత్తి అయిపోయి వాళ్ళు పెద్ద రొయ్యలు అవడం కోసం ఏవో కలిపేస్తున్నారు. మత్స్యకారులు తెచ్చిన రొయ్యలు, సముద్రంలో ఉన్న చేపలు రొయ్యలకి ధర తగ్గిపోతుందండి. ఈ ఈ వీళ్ళు పెంచే రొయ్యలకి ధర ఎక్కువ వస్తుందండి. మన సముద్రంలో పట్టుకున్న చేపలు రొయ్యలకి ధర తగ్గిపోతుందండి. ఈ ఒక రసాయనాలు కలపడం వలన ఈ తీర ప్రాంతం 975 ఉండే ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్ సముద్ర తీర కోస్టల్ ఏరియా అంతా కూడా టూరిజం డెవలప్మెంట్లు మన చూసుకుంటే దివ్యస్ ఫ్యాక్టరీ నుంచి భీమిలి నుంచి ఫిషింగ్ హార్బర్ వరకు కూడా దివ్యస్ ఫ్యాక్టరీలో 5 గ్రామాలన్నీ కూడా మొత్తం కాలుష్యం అయిపోయింది. వాళ్ళు అర్ధరాత్రి అనకుండా వాళ్ళు యాసిడ్ వాటర్ డైరెక్ట్ గా వాళ్ళు వదిలేస్తున్నారు. మనం ఎన్నిసార్లు మనం వాళ్ళతో పోరాడినా సరే సరిపోవటం లేదు. వాళ్ళు మత్స్యకారులకి రోగాలన్నీ వస్తున్నాయండి. ఆ స్కిన్ ఎలర్జీలు, కిడ్నీలు పాడైపోవడం ఇవన్నీ కూడా ఉన్నాయండి. దివ్యస్ ఫ్యాక్టరీ స్టార్ట్ చేయడం వలన ఆ ఒక పొల్యూషన్ యాసిడ్ వాటర్ డైరెక్ట్ గా పంపడం వలన కూడా ఈ మత్స్యకారులు 5 గ్రామాలు డిస్ప్లే అయిపోయినాయి. వాళ్ళు జీవనోపాధి కోల్పోయారు, ఆరోగ్యం కూడా కోల్పోయారండి. అక్వాకల్చర్లు, మల్టీనేషనల్ కంపెనీ దివ్యస్ ఫ్యాక్టరీలు, యాసిడ్ వాటర్లు ఇవన్నీ కూడా మత్స్యకారులకి ప్రమాదకరమైన పరిస్థితి ఈ రోజు ఏర్పడిందండి. మేము ఒకటే కోరుకుంటున్నామండి, దయచేసి మత్స్యకారులకి చిన్న సన్న రైతుకారు మత్స్యకారులకి జీవనోపాధి చూపించి అక్వాకల్చర్లు ఇవన్నీ కూడా టూరిజం డెవలప్మెంట్లు, బీచ్ రోడ్లు తర్వాత మీరు చూసుకున్నట్లయితే గనక భీమిలి నుండి ఫిషింగ్ హార్బర్ వరకు కూడా 28 కిలోమీటర్ల తీరంలో మేరీకల్చర్ వేశారండి. 40 మేరీకల్చర్లు వేశారండి. మేరీకల్చర్ అంటే పెద్ద నెట్లు వేస్తారండి. దాంట్లో బయట నుంచి చేపలు తీసుకొచ్చి దాంట్లో వేసి పెంచుతున్నారండి. బయటన మత్స్యకారులే దానిలో పడవ మీద వెళ్ళి మేత వేస్తారు. ఆ మేత వేసినప్పుడు ఈ జీతాలు కూడా CMFR ఆఫీస్ వాళ్ళే ఇస్తారండి. ఈ ఒక మేరీకల్చర్ పెంచుతున్నారండి. మీరు చూసినట్లయితే గనక ఇలాంటివన్నీ కూడా జరుగుతున్నప్పుడు చిన్న తరహా మత్స్యకారులు సముద్రంలోకి వెళ్ళేటప్పుడు ఆ మేరీకల్చర్ అంతా అడ్డేయడం వలన చాలా నష్టపోయే పరిస్థితి ఉంది. ఉత్పత్తి తగ్గిపోతుంది, జీవనోపాధి తగ్గిపోతుంది. మత్స్యకారులు ఈ ఒక ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్ కోస్టల్ తీర మత్స్యకారులు అందరూ కూడా చిన్న తరహా మత్స్యకారులకే చాలా విపరీతమైన నష్టం వాటిల్తుందండి. దయచేసి మన ఒక నేషనల్ ఫిష్ వర్కర్స్ ఫోరం, WFF అందరూ కలిసి దయచేసి ఈ ఒక అక్వాకల్చర్లు, టూరిజం డెవలప్మెంట్లు, మేరీకల్చర్లు, సాగరమాలలు, ఫిషింగ్ జట్టీలు ఇవన్నీ కూడా కోస్టల్ తీరం మొత్తం కూడా తీసుకుని అమ్మడం జరుగుతుందండి. పెద్ద పెద్ద వాళ్ళందరూ కూడా బడా బడా బాబులు కూడా తీసుకుంటున్నారు. చిన్న తరహా మత్స్యకారుల కోసం ఏమీ పట్టించుకోలేదండి. మేము పోరాటం చేస్తూ వస్తున్నామండి. అయినా కేంద్రంకి ఏమీ కూడా ఇది లేకుండా అయిందండి. దయచేసి ఈ ఒక కోస్టల్ తీరం ప్రాంతం అంతా కూడా ఈ అక్వాకల్చర్ తో నిండిపోయింది. దాని వలన ప్రజలకి, మత్స్యకారులకి రోగాలు వస్తున్నాయి. మంచినీళ్ళు తాగటానికి లేవు. వాళ్ళు వండుకోవటానికి లేవు. ఏమీ లేవండి. కాలుష్యమైన పోనీ పెంచిన నీళ్లు డైరెక్ట్ గా వాళ్ళు ఏం చేస్తున్నారంటే మంచినీళ్ళుగా చేయకుండా ఆ సముద్రంలోకి వదిలేస్తున్నారండి. ఈ ఒక రసాయన పదార్థాలన్నీ కూడా. అందువలన నష్టపోయే పరిస్థితి. ఈ రోజు ఆ కోస్టల్ అక్వాకల్చర్ మొత్తం 975 కిలోమీటర్ల తీరం, సముద్ర తీరం అంతా కూడా ఫారెస్ట్ ల్యాండ్ మత్స్యకారులకి చెందాలి. మత్స్యకారి తీర ప్రాంతాల భూములన్నీ కూడా మడ అడవులు, ఇసుక దెబ్బలన్నీ కూడా పోయినాయి, తీసేసుకుంటున్నారండి. దీని వలన మీరు దీర్ఘంగా ఆలోచించి మన WFF, NFF ఇవన్నీ కలిసి ఈ ఒక చిన్న తరహా మత్స్యకారుల్ని కాపాడుతారని ఒక ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్ ట్రెడిషనల్ ఫిష్ వర్కర్స్ యూనియన్ మీకు తెలుపుకుంటూ ఈ అవకాశం ఇచ్చిన మీ అందరికీ నా నమస్కారాలండి. థ్యాంక్ యూ.
Thank you so much, Lakshmi, and thanks to the interpretation, Satya. Also, the Thai interpreter, thank you very much for Arib. Thank you for the translations. The interpretations actually keep our sessions intact because many a times we are not able to understand each other in our mother tongue. So it becomes important that the language holders that you guys are, you are stepping in and helping all of us understand better. Lakshmi Garu, thank you very much for this presentation. As I had said, when community leaders speak, community leaders like Lakshmi, she's also going to be a representative from the National Fish Workers Forum in the World Forum of Fisher People General Assembly in Brazil. She's going to be among the 2 representatives from India. So thank you very much, Lakshmi. When community leaders speak, my point was that we are not able to only stick to the perspectives on food sovereignty. We will actually bring forth this multitude of issues that we are seeing. As Dr. Vandana said, biodiversity being a primary concern, public health being a primary concern, labor atrocities being a primary concern, the human rights violations on the communities being of primary concern. All of this work amidst us. And I think the land ecology, water pollution that is done by the aquaculture industry. Interestingly, comrades like Lakshmi, who are playing a very serious senior role in Andhra Pradesh state, has actually been banned from entering aquaculture farms by the muscle power and the money power and the political power of these farm owners. So this is privatization, corporatization of natural resources at its worst. So this whole culture of how the factory farming of fish has taken over needs to be noted. We will quickly move to Pradeep, Comrade Pradeep Alangovan from Tamil Nadu. Thank you, Lakshmi Garu, once again for your time and speaking here. Pradeep is a young researcher, someone who has worked on this issue. Over to you, Pradeep.
Thanks, Anna. Hi, everyone. I would like to speak in Tamil. So all the participants, I request to follow the interpretations. So, Anna, I am audible, na?
Yes, Pradeep, you are very much
okay. குறிப்பா வந்தனா மேம் சொன்னது போல நான் அதுலேருந்து தான் தொடங்க விரும்புகிறேன். என்னுடைய உரையை ரொம்ப நேரம் எடுத்துக்க விரும்பல, ஆனால் அதுலேருந்து தான் தொடங்க விரும்புகிறேன். ஃபேக்ட்ரி ஃபார்மிங் ஷிம்ப் கல்ச்சர் அதுதான் வந்து கோட் பண்ணு சொல்கிறாங்க. ஆனால் நான் வந்து அதில் கூடுதலாக ஒரு வார்த்தை ஆட் பண்ணணும்னு நினைக்கிறேன். இதை ஃபேக்ட்ரி அப்படின்னு கூட சொல்ல முடியுமா அப்படின்னு எனக்கு தெரியல. ஏன்னா இதோட நேச்சர்லேயே வந்து இது எக்கோசிஸ்டத்தை அழிக்கக்கூடியதாகத்தான் இருக்கு. குறிப்பாக விஜய் என்ன சொன்ன போது இதோட பல டைமென்ஷன்ஸ் நம்ம வந்து பேச வேண்டியது இருக்கு. குறிப்பா இந்தியாவை பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் நம்ம எடுத்துக்கிட்டோம்னா இந்த அக்வாகல்ச்சர் பாண்ட் அப்படிங்கிறது நிலம் சார்ந்ததா இருக்கு. அந்த நிலம்ங்கிறது
translation you will have
Jenna, you are muted.
Yeah, so Ryan, if you can just click the English button, then we can all hear you in the English channel. I don't know, that might be better because then we will remain in the English channel and the recording, if the host remains in the English channel, then the recording will come from the English channel.
Okay.
Is that fine now? Can we hear Ryan in the English channel now? Yes, very much.
Shall we start, Anna?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Pradeep, you'll have to restart. Sorry for that.
Okay, no issue. ஸோ வந்தனா மேம் சொன்னதுலேருந்து தான் என்னுடைய பேச்சை நான் தொடங்கணும்னு நினைக்கிறேன். வந்தனா மேம் சொல்லும்போது என்ன சொன்னாங்க, ஃபேக்டரி ஃபார்மிங் அப்படிங்கிறத வந்து மென்ஷன் பண்ணாங்க. அது ரொம்ப பொருத்தமானது கூட. ஆனா அதுல வந்து கூடுதலா சொல்ல விரும்புறதுன்னா இது ஃபேக்டரின்னு கூட சொல்ல முடியுமா அப்படின்னு எனக்கு தெரியல. எந்த அடிப்படையில்னா இது முழுக்க முழுக்க வந்து இயற்கையை அழிக்கக்கூடியதா இருக்கு. எந்த நார்ம்ஸ் எதுக்கும் கட்டுப்படக்கூடாது. குறிப்பா இந்தியாவிற்கு எடுத்துக்கிட்டோம்னா எல்லா இறால் பண்ணைகளுமே நிலம் சார்ந்ததா இருக்கு. நிலம் எதை சார்ந்து இருக்குன்னா சாதி சார்ந்ததா இருக்கு. சோ இங்க நம்ம கார்பரேட், அதாவது பெரும் முதலாளிகள் அப்படின்னு நம்ம பேசும்போது இங்க சாதியையும் ஒரு இன்டர்செக்ஷனா நம்ம பேச வேண்டிய தேவை அடிப்படையாவே இருக்கு. இன்னொரு அடிப்படையில இந்த சாதியவாதிகள் இங்க இருக்கக்கூடிய விவசாய சமூகங்களும் மீனவர்களையும் பிரிக்கக்கூடிய வேலையையும், இந்த இறால் பண்ணைக்கு எதிரான போராட்டங்கள்ல பல சமூகங்கள் சம்பந்தப்பட்டிருப்பதையும் மறைக்கக்கூடிய வேலை தொடர்ந்து செஞ்சுட்டு இருக்காங்க. அந்த அடிப்படையில என்னுடைய உரையை நான் வந்து நிகழ்த்தணும் அப்படின்னு நினைக்கிறேன். தமிழகத்தை பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் இங்க இருக்கக்கூடிய எல்லா கனிமங்களும், குறிப்பாக காவிரி டெல்டா பகுதியை எடுத்துக்கிட்டோம்னா மிகவும் செழிப்பு வாய்ந்த நிலப்பகுதிகளை, விவசாய நிலங்களை கொண்டிருக்கக்கூடிய ஒரு பகுதி இருக்கு. இதுல குறிப்பா நம்ம எடுத்துக்கிட்டோம்னா 3 சமூகங்கள் பிரதானமா இருக்கு. ஒண்ணு மீனவ சமூகங்கள், இரண்டாவதா வந்து தலித்துகள் இருக்காங்க, இந்தியாவை பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் ஒடுக்கப்பட்ட மக்கள் இருக்காங்க, அதுக்கு அடுத்ததா பழங்குடி மக்கள், இண்டிஜினியஸ் பீப்புள் இருக்காங்க. இவங்க 3 வகையில இங்க இருக்கக்கூடிய சாதிய நில உடைமை சமூகத்தால ஒடுக்கப்படுறாங்க. ஒண்ணு சாதி ரீதியா, பாலின ரீதியா, வர்க்க ரீதியா. இந்த அடிப்படையில இந்த 3 கடலோர சமூகங்களுடையும் பாரம்பரிய மீனவ சமூகங்களையும் அவங்களுடைய இந்த கடற்கரை பொது வளங்களா இருக்கக்கூடிய கோஸ்டல் காமன்ஸ்ல இருந்து எந்த அளவுக்கு ஒடுக்க முடியுமோ அந்த ஒடுக்குதல் நடந்துகிட்டு இருக்கு. இது இறால் பண்ணைகள் வழியா மிகவும் தீவிரமா நடக்குது. இது எந்த வகையில நடக்குது அப்படின்னு நம்ம புரிஞ்சுக்கணும் அப்படின்னா, இந்த ஒரு வரைபடம் நமக்கு தெளிவா நமக்கு சொல்லும். இங்க பல மீனவ கிராமங்கள், இந்த இதுல இந்த சிவப்பு கலர்ல இருக்கக்கூடிய இந்த கட்டங்கள் வந்து மீனவ கிராமங்களை குறிக்குது. அதற்கு பின்னாடி இந்த பச்சை கலர்ல இருக்கக்கூடியது நீங்க இதுல இருந்து புரிஞ்சுக்கலாம், ஒரு மீனவ கிராமத்திற்கும் இடைப்பட்ட பகுதியில எந்த அளவுக்கு அதனுடைய இயற்கை வளங்கள் இருக்கு, குறிப்பா வந்து மீன் இனப்பெருக்கம் செய்யக்கூடிய பகுதிகள் இருக்கு அப்படிங்கிறத நம்ம ஒரு ஆனா அதே சமயத்துல
Pradeep, one second. Pradeep, are you in the English channel or are you in the original channel?
ஆக்சுவலா இங்கிலீஷ் சேனல்ல தானே இருக்கேன், அதான்
So you need to shift to the original channel. That's all. No other problem. Then Ryan can do simultaneously because otherwise both of you are there in the same channel. So you can hear both of you. Yeah. Just shift to original channel.
ஒரே நிமிஷமா.
Yeah.
Sharing. Yes. Actually, எனக்கு okay. YouTube audio. Okay.
Yeah.
ஆனா இப்ப கேக்குதா?
கேக்குது.
இல்ல மறுபடியும் இங்கிலீஷ்ல தான் இருக்கு.
Okay.
ஜப்பானீஸ். Okay. Sorry.
You just no problem. You just need to be in the original channel.
சோ அதன் அடிப்படையில தான் வந்து நான் இத வைக்கணும் அப்படின்னு ரொம்ப ஆசைப்படுறேன். இந்த ஏரியாக்கள் மொத்தமாவே நம்ம எடுத்துக்கிட்டோம்னா ஆனா ஓகே இல்ல விஜயனா ஓகே இல்ல? சோ இந்த இடங்கள் மொத்தமாவே நம்ம எடுத்துக்கிட்டோம்னா இந்த வரைபடத்தை நீங்க பாத்தீங்கன்னா தெரியும். இந்த இடத்துல வந்து அலையாத்தி காடுகள் இருக்கு, அலைத்தாக்கம் உள்ள நீர்நிலைகள் இருக்கு, விவசாய நிலங்கள் இருக்கு. இதெல்லாம் ஒட்டுமொத்தமா கலந்த ஒரு பகுதியாகத்தான் இந்த இடம் இருக்கு. இந்த பகுதிகளில் மீனவ மக்கள் தங்களுடைய படகுகளை நிறுத்துறாங்க. தலித்துகள் வந்து தங்கள் கைகளால், குறிப்பா தலித் பெண்கள், பழங்குடிகள், பழங்குடிப்பட்டிகள் இல்லாத டினோட்டிஃபைட் ட்ரைப்ஸ் எல்லாருமே வந்து தங்களுடைய கைகளால ரால் தடவி பிடிக்கிறாங்க. ஆனா இது எல்லாத்தையுமே வந்து ஒரு அதிகாரம் செலுத்தக்கூடிய ஒன்னா வந்து இங்க என்ன இருக்குன்னா ரால் பணிகள் இருக்கு. குறிப்பா ரால் பணிகளுக்கு பின்னாடி இருக்கக்கூடிய சாதி இருக்கு. அந்த சாதி என்ன பண்ணுதுன்னா இந்த ஒட்டுமொத்த மக்களுடைய ஒரு பொது வளமா இருக்கக்கூடிய ஒரு பகுதி மேல ஒரு மிகப்பெரிய ஆதிக்கத்தை செலுத்துது. இதை ஏன் புரிஞ்சுக்க வேண்டிய தேவை இருக்குன்னா இதுதான் இங்க ஒரு மேஜர் ரோல் பிளே பண்ணிக்கிட்டு இருக்கு. இங்க இருக்கக்கூடிய மற்ற எல்லா சமூகத்தும், குறிப்பா நான் அதை அடுத்து என்னுடைய இறுதியில கூட சொல்லலான் இருக்கேன். ஆனா இங்க அதை குறிப்பிடணும் அப்படின்னு நினைக்கிறேன். இது என்ன நடக்குதுன்னா குறிப்பா வந்து மீனவர்கள்னா வந்து கடல் மட்டும்தான், அவங்களுக்கு வந்து இந்த இயற்கை வளங்கள்ல எந்த உரிமையும் கிடையாது அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு நெரேட்டிவையும் செட் பண்ணுது. தலித் மக்களுக்கு வந்து குறிப்பா இந்தியாவை பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் மீன்பிடித்துறை தலித் மக்களுக்கு எந்த மீனவர் அங்கீகாரமோ, ஏன்னா அவங்க பல தலைமுறைகளா இந்த இயற்கை சூழல்ல வந்து மீன் பிடிச்சிட்டு இருக்காங்க. ஆனா அவங்களுக்கு அதை எந்த அதிகாரத்தையும் ஃபிஷர் பீப்புள்ஸ் அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு ஐடென்டிட்டியை கொடுக்கல. அப்ப என்ன நடக்குதுன்னா இந்த ரெண்டு நெரேட்டிவை செட் பண்ணி இந்த ஒட்டுமொத்த இடமோ இது விவசாய மக்களுக்கு அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு நெரேட்டிவை வச்சு விவசாய மக்களுங்கிற போர்வையில இங்க இருக்கக்கூடிய சாதிய நில உடைமைய அமைப்பு என்ன பண்ணுதுன்னா இந்த ஒட்டுமொத்த பொது வளங்களையும் ஆக்கிரமிச்சிருக்கு. இதுதான் இங்க நடந்துகிட்டு இருக்கு. இது குறிப்பா வந்து இங்க இருக்கக்கூடிய இயற்கை வளங்கள் மீது கடுமையான பாதிப்பை உண்டாக்கிக்கிட்டு இருக்கு. குறிப்பா இது மீனவ மக்கள் மத்தியில என்ன மாதிரியான பாதிப்பை உண்டாக்கி இருக்கு அப்படிங்கிறத நம்ம ரொம்ப தெளிவா பார்க்க வேண்டியதா இருக்கு. அதை குறிப்பா சாதிய கண்ணோட்டத்தோட அணுக வேண்டியது இருக்கு. குறிப்பா எல்லாரும் சொன்னது போல இங்க வந்து எல்லா நீர்நிலைகளும் நீர் பரப்புகளும் வந்து மாசு அடைஞ்சிருக்கு அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு வார்த்தையில் இதை அடக்க முடியாது. குறிப்பா எல்லா நீர்நிலைகள்லயும் வந்து இங்க என்ன நடந்திருக்கு அப்படின்னா ரால் பண்ணைகள்ல போடக்கூடிய ரால் பண்ணைகள் எப்படி நடக்கும் அப்படின்னா அதுல ஃபீட் இருக்கும், ஃபெர்டிலைசர் இருக்கும், பெஸ்டிசைட்ஸ் இருக்கும். இப்படி பல வகையில வந்து மருந்துகள் போடுறாங்க. இந்த எல்லா மருந்துகளும் எப்படின்னா ஈவன் அக்வாகல்ச்சர் அத்தாரிட்டி ஆக்ட் இந்தியாவில் உள்ள சட்டத்தின்படி ரால் பண்ணைகள்ல வந்து இந்த மருந்துகள் தான் போடணும்னு ஒரு இது இருந்தாலும் இங்க எங்களுடைய கள ஆய்வுல தெரிஞ்சது என்னன்னா பல ரால் பண்ணைகள் அந்த இதையுமே ஃபாலோ பண்றது கிடையாது. குறிப்பா இந்த ரால் பண்ணைகள்ல போடக்கூடிய மருந்துகள் என்னன்னா அங்க இருக்கக்கூடிய வளர்ற ராளுக்கு மட்டும்தான் வந்து சப்போர்ட் பண்ணுமே தவிர அதுல இருக்கக்கூடிய மற்ற எல்லா உயிர்களையுமே அழிக்கக்கூடியது. இதோட அர்த்தம் என்னன்னா இந்த தண்ணி இந்த பிராக்கிஷ் வாட்டர் எக்கோசிஸ்டத்துல வரும்போது அதுல உள்ள இயற்கையான எல்லா உயிர்களையுமே அழிக்கக்கூடியது. இது இங்க நடந்துகிட்டு இருக்கு. இரண்டாவது, இங்க இருக்கக்கூடிய மண் வளம் கடுமையா பாதிச்சிருக்கு. இங்க குறிப்பா அந்த மண் வளம் பாதிச்சிருக்குன்னா எல்லா மீனவ கிராமங்கள்லயும் இன்னைக்கு வந்து குறிப்பா சுனாமிக்கு பிறகு கட்டி கொடுக்கப்பட்ட எல்லா வீடுகளும் கடலுக்கு பசந்திருக்கு. இதற்கு உவர்ப்பு தன்மை அப்படிங்கிறது ஒரு மிக முக்கியமான காரணியா இருக்கு. இந்த காரணியின் காரணமா இன்னைக்கு வந்து மண் வளம் கெட்டிருக்கு. குறிப்பா நல்ல விவசாய நிலங்களும் கூட ரால் பணிகள் வந்ததுக்கு பிறகு ஈவன் மக்கள் சொல்லக்கூடிய கருத்துக்களின் அடிப்படையில பிராக்கிஷ் வாட்டர் எக்கோசிஸ்டத்துக்கு பக்கத்திலேயே வந்து இவங்க அதோட கரையில் கூட விவசாயம் பண்ணியிருக்காங்க. ஆனா இப்ப அந்த நிலைமை இல்லை. ஒரு ஒரு கடலோர பகுதிகளில் இருக்கக்கூடிய ஒட்டுமொத்த நில பயன்பாடையும் இது மாத்திருக்கு. மூணாவதா, மழைக்காலங்கள்லயும் குறிப்பா வந்து ரப்சி கண்டிஷன்ஸ்ல கடல்ல வந்து மீன் பிடிக்க முடியாத சமயங்கள்ல இது போல பிராக்கிஷ் வாட்டர் எக்கோசிஸ்டத்துல மீனவ மக்கள் இறால்களும் தங்களுடைய மீன்களும் தங்களுடைய உணவு தேவைக்காக எடுப்பாங்க. அப்ப அதை முற்றிலும் இன்னைக்கு வந்து இறால் பண்ணைகள் தடுத்திருக்கு. குறிப்பா எந்த ஆற்றின் கரையிலையும் நம்ம நடக்க முடியாது. எல்லா இடங்கள்லையும் வந்து நம்ம போறதுக்கான தடைகளை விதிச்சிருக்கு. எல்லா மீன்பிடி இடங்கள்லையும் வந்து இன்னைக்கு உள்ள நுழைய முடியாத அளவுக்கு இறால் பண்ணைகள் சொல்லி இருக்கு. குறிப்பா வந்து அந்த இடங்கள்ல நம்ம உள்ள போனோம்னா ஏன் வரீங்க, எதுக்கு வரீங்க அப்படிங்கிற கொஸ்டின்ஸை வைக்கக்கூடியது. அந்த அன்ரெஸ்ட்ரிக்டட் அக்சஸை நமக்கு தடை பண்ணிருக்கு. ஏன்னா இதோட பின்னணி என்னன்னா, இன்னைக்கு வந்து அவங்களுக்கு அதுல இருந்து இறால் பண்ணையில இருந்து தண்ணி எடுக்கிறதுக்கும் கழிவுநீரை வெளியேற்றதையும் நம்ம எந்த விதத்திலையும் கேள்வி கேட்டக்கூடாது, எந்த விதத்திலையும் நம்ம வந்து அந்த பகுதிகளுக்கு போயிடவே கூடாது அப்படிங்கறத நினைக்கிறாங்க. தோல்வியாதிகள், சிறுநீரக பிரச்சனைகள். இது ஏன் சிறுநீரக பிரச்சனைகள் வருதுன்னா, இன்னைக்கு கடலோர பகுதியில் இருக்கக்கூடிய ஒட்டுமொத்த நீர் வளத்தையும் 2 வகையில இறால் பண்ணைகள் உபயோகப்படுத்துது. ஒண்ணு, இறால் பண்ணைகள் அங்க இருக்கக்கூடிய நன்னீர் வளத்தை பெரிய பெரிய மோட்டாரை வச்சு எடுக்கிறது ஒண்ணு. இரண்டாவது, இந்த ஒட்டுமொத்த அதாவது உவர்ப்பு தண்ணிய ஒரு இடத்துல தேக்கி வைக்கும் போது அந்த உவர்ப்பு தண்ணிங்கிறது பெர்குலேட் ஆகும் வாட்டர் டேபிள்ல. அப்ப 2 வகையிலையும் வந்து அது நிலத்தடி நீரை பாதிச்சிருக்கு. இது அங்க உள்ள மீனவ பெண்கள் மத்தியில ஒரு
Pradeep, if you don't want Ryan to beat you up after the session, then you need to go a little slow. No, don't stop your presentation. You need to speak a little slow. You're speaking very, very well. You just need to go a little slow so that Ryan gets time for translation. Yeah.
Okay,
sorry for interrupting. Sorry.
அப்ப ஒரு நிமிஷம் ஷேர் பண்ணிக்கிறேன். இது என்ன இருக்குன்னா, இந்த நிலத்தடி நீரையும் அங்க இருக்கக்கூடிய உவர் நீரையும் அந்த தேக்கி வச்சதன் காரணமா, அதாவது இன்ட்ரூஷன், இன்கர்ஷன், இந்த 2 வகைகள் சயின்டிபிக்கா நம்ம சொல்லணும்னா இந்த 2 வகையிலையும் மக்களுடைய நிலத்தடி நீர் வளத்தை சுரண்டி இருக்காங்க. இன்னொரு வகையில மீனவ மக்கள் பயன்படுத்தின எல்லா நன்னீர் குளங்களும் இன்னைக்கு இறால் பண்ணையால உவர் நீரா மாறி இருக்கு. இந்த 2இன் காரணமா இன்னைக்கு வந்து 1000, 3000ன்னு மீனவ பெண்கள் குறிப்பா இதுல வந்து 1000, 2000ன்னு நம்ம நிலத்தடி குடிநீருக்காக இன்னைக்கு ஸ்பெண்ட் பண்ண வேண்டிய தேவைகள் வந்திருக்கு. குறிப்பா மீனவ பெண்கள், ஏன்னா அன்றாட வீட்டு வேலைங்கிறது இன்னைக்கு பெண்கள் தான் பண்ணிக்கிட்டு இருக்காங்க. அப்படி இருக்கிற ஒரு கால சூழல்ல மிகப்பெரிய அளவுல பெண்களை அது பாதிச்சிருக்கு. குறிப்பா இங்க நான் முன்னாடியே சொன்னது போல இந்த சாதிய சமூகம்னு சொல்றது இன்னைக்கு மீனவ கிராமங்கள் எல்லாமே வந்து பெருமளவில் விவசாயிகள் இருக்கக்கூடிய ஒரு பஞ்சாயத்து கிராமங்களோட தான் ஒன்றிணைஞ்சிருக்கு. அப்ப அந்த சூழல்ல அங்க உள்ள மொத்த அதிகாரமும் யாருக்கிட்ட இருக்குன்னா, அங்க யார் நில உடைமை சமூகமா சாதியில உயர்ந்தவர்களா இருக்காங்களோ அவங்க கிட்டதான் இருக்கு. அப்படி இருக்கக்கூடிய ஒரு சூழல்ல இந்த சாதிய சமூகம், அந்த சாதிய பஞ்சாயத்து தீர்மானிக்கக்கூடியதுதான் வந்து இன்னைக்கு நடந்துகிட்டு இருக்கு. அப்ப அந்த நிலைமையில என்ன நடக்குதுன்னா, பல இடங்கள்ல இந்த இறால் பண்ணை பிரச்சனைய விவசாயிகளுக்கும் மீனவர்களுக்குமான பிரச்சனையா முன் வச்சு அதன் வழியா வந்து பெருமளவில வந்து மீனவர்கள் தாக்கப்பட்ட சம்பவங்களும் கூட நடந்திருக்கு. ஒரு பர்டிகுலர் நிகழ்வை வந்து நான் ஷேர் பண்ணணும் அப்படின்னு விரும்புறேன். எப்படி வந்து இந்தியாவில் உள்ள ஒட்டுமொத்த அதிகார அமைப்புகளும் செயல்படுது அப்படிங்கிறதுக்கு ஒரு இறால் பண்ணை வந்து கொட்டாய்மேடு அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு கிராமம் மயிலாடுதுறை மாவட்டத்துல நீங்க இதுக்கு முன்னாடி பார்த்த வரைபடம்ங்கிறது அந்த வரைபடம் தான். அந்த ஊர்ல வந்து ஒரு 13 பேர் மேல கிட்டத்தட்ட பல வருடங்களா இறால் பண்ணைக்கு எதிராக போராடுறாங்க. 30 வருடங்களுக்கு மேல அவங்க போராட்டம் நடக்குது. அப்படி நடக்கக்கூடிய ஒரு போராட்டத்துல ஒரு 13 பேர் மேல வழக்கு தொடுக்கிறாங்க. யார் தொடுக்கிறாங்கன்னா, அந்த இறால் பண்ணை உரிமையாளர்கள் அந்த இறால் குட்டையை சேதப்படுத்திட்டாங்க அப்படின்னு ஒரு வழக்கு தொடுக்கிறாங்க. இந்த வழக்கு நீதிமன்றத்துக்கு போகுது. அந்த நீதிமன்றத்துக்கு போகும்போது என்ன நடக்குதுன்னா, அங்க இருக்கக்கூடிய எஃப்ஐஆர்ல இருந்து 13 பேர் குறிப்பிட்டிருந்ததுல இருந்து 2 பேருடைய பெயர் நீக்கப்படுது. ஏன்னா 2 பேர் அந்த சமயத்துல இல்லவே இல்லை. இன்னொரு விஷயம் நம்ம பார்க்க வேண்டியது, இந்த இறால் பண்ணைக்கு ரெனிவல் ஆஃப் ரெஜிஸ்ட்ரேஷனே கிடையாது. இதை வந்து அங்க இருக்கக்கூடிய மீன்வளத்துறை அதிகாரி தன்னுடைய கடிதத்துல தெளிவா குறிப்பிட்டிருக்காரு. ஆனாலும் 2019ல வந்து 11 பேர் குற்றம் சாட்டப்படுறாங்க. கிட்டத்தட்ட 2023 வரைக்கும் ஒரு உரிமம் இல்லாத இறால் பண்ணை எந்தவித மக்கள் போராட்டத்தை ஒடுக்குவதற்காக இந்த போராட்டத்தை மக்கள் வந்து இறால் பண்ணையை சேதப்படுத்திட்டாங்க, குறிப்பா மீனவ தலைவர்கள் சேதப்படுத்திட்டாங்கன்னு பிரிச்சு மீனவ மக்களுடைய போராட்டத்தை ஒடுக்குற வடிவத்தை பல ஊர்களில் நம்ம பார்க்க முடியுது. தமிழகத்துல பல இடங்கள்ல எங்கெங்கெல்லாம் வந்து மக்களுடைய இறால் பண்ணைகள் போராட்டங்கள் நடக்குதோ அங்கெல்லாம் இது போல உரிமமில்லாத இறால் பண்ணைகளும் கூட இப்படி ஃபால்ஸ் கேசஸ வைக்கிறாங்க. இதை நம்ம பார்க்க முடியுது. இப்படி பல வகையிலையும் மீனவ மக்களுடைய உணவு இறையாண்மைக்கும் அவங்க வந்து இந்த கோஸ்டல் காமன்ஸ்குள்ள உள்ள போறதையும் இந்த சாதிய சமூகம் தொடர்ந்து தடுத்துக்கிட்டு இருக்கு. இது இன்னொரு வகையில பார்த்தா எப்படி இந்த குறிப்பான அந்த என்னுடைய வரைபடத்தை நீங்க பார்த்திருந்தா தெரியும். இறால் இந்த வரைபடத்துல இந்த இடத்த பர்டிகுலரா நீங்க பார்க்கும்போது உங்களுக்கு தெரியும், இந்த இடத்துல அலையாத்தி காடுகள், அதாவது மேங்க்ரூவுக்குள்ளேயும் இன்னைக்கு வந்து இறால் பண்ணைகள் செயல்பட்டுக்கிட்டு இருக்கு அப்படிங்கிறத நம்ம புரிஞ்சுக்கலாம். அப்ப இந்த மேங்க்ரூவ் இன்னைக்கு சூழலியல், உலக சூழலியல்ல வந்து மிக முக்கியமான இடத்தை வைக்கக்கூடிய அலையாத்தி காடுகள் கடுமையா பாதிக்கப்படுது. அதே போல சுத்திகரிக்கப்படாத இந்த கழிவு நீருங்கிறது இந்த எக்கோசிஸ்டத்தை முழுமையா காலி பண்ணுது. அதுல ஆல்கைல் ப்ளூம்ங்கிறது ஒரு பெரிய ஃபேக்டரா இருக்கு. அந்த போடக்கூடிய மருந்துகள் மீன் உற்பத்தியை தடுக்குது. குறிப்பா வந்து இறால்கள் வந்து இந்த மாதிரியான சூழலியல் அமைப்பை சார்ந்தா இருக்கு. இன்னைக்கு கடல் இறால்களுடைய எண்ணிக்கையும் கணிசமா குறையறதுக்கு இதுல போடக்கூடிய மருந்துகள் மிக முக்கியமான காரணமா இருக்கு. நான் முன்னாடியே சொன்னது போல மீன்களுடைய இனப்பெருக்க பாதைகள் வந்து கடுமையா பாதிக்கப்பட்டிருக்கு. இன்னைக்கு கடல்ல மீன் இல்ல மீன் சொல்றோம்னா அதுக்கு மிக முக்கியமான காரணமா அந்த மீனவர்களுடைய உணவு இறையாண்மையில ஒரு தாக்கத்தை ஏற்படுத்தக்கூடியதா வந்து இறால் பண்ணைகள் இருக்கு அப்படிங்கிறத நம்ம புரிஞ்சுக்கணும். அதே போல இன்னைக்கு விவசாய மக்களுடைய நம்ம மீனவர்கள் மட்டுமல்ல, சிறு விவசாயிகளுக்கும் இது பெரிய பாதிப்பை உண்டாகி இருக்கு. ஜஸ்ட் செகண்ட். இன்னைக்கு வந்து சிறு விவசாயிகள் பயன்படுத்தக்கூடிய எல்லா பாசன வாய்க்கால்களையும் இன்னைக்கு இறால் பண்ணைகள் ஆக்கிரமிச்சிருக்கு. இறால் பண்ணைகள் அதை தங்களுடைய கழிவு நீரை வந்து வெளியேற்றதுக்கான ஒரு களமா மட்டும்தான் இன்னைக்கு பார்த்துக்கிட்டு இருக்கு. இது வந்து பல நிலமற்ற சிறிய நிலங்களை வச்சிருக்கிற விவசாயிகள் இறால் பண்ணைக்கு தன்னுடைய நிலங்களை வந்து லீஸ்க்கு கொடுக்கணும் அப்படிங்கிற நிலையை வந்து உருவாக்கிக்கிட்டு இருக்கு அப்படிங்கிறத நம்ம புரிஞ்சுக்க வேண்டியது இருக்கு. இதே போல நான் முன்னாடியே சொன்னது போல இது மீனவ மக்களை மட்டும் பாதிக்கல. இந்த மாதிரியான பகுதிகளில் மீன்கள் பிடிக்கக்கூடிய கைகளால், குறிப்பா இந்த 4வதா உள்ள புகைப்படத்தை நீங்க பாத்தீங்கன்னா தெரியும், கைகளால் தடவி மீன் பிடிக்கக்கூடிய மீனவ தலித் பெண்கள் பல ஆயிரக்கணக்கில் வந்து பல தலைமுறைகளா இந்த பகுதிகளில் வந்து கைகளால் தடவி இறால் பிடிச்சிட்டு இருக்காங்க. அந்த பெண்களுடைய உள்ள போறதையே தடுக்குது. அந்த எக்கோசிஸ்டத்துக்குள்ள அவங்க என்ட்ரே ஆக முடியாத அளவு, குறிப்பா வந்து பெண்களுடைய வாடை பட்டா கூட வளர்ப்பு இறால்கள் செத்து போயிடும் அப்படின்னு சொல்ற அளவுக்கு தான் இன்னைக்கு ஆதிக்க இந்த இறால் பண்ணை உரிமையாளர்கள் இருந்துகிட்டு இருக்காங்க. தலித்துகள் பொதுவா நிலமற்றவர்கள், அவங்களுடைய நில உரிமைங்கிறது வந்து பறிக்கப்பட்டிருக்கு. எப்படின்னா பல இறால் பண்ணைகள் வந்து தலித் மக்கள்கிட்ட இருந்து மிக குறைவான விலைக்கு இன்னைக்கு நிலத்தை வாங்கியிருக்கு. அதுக்கு வந்து அரசியல் சமூக அழுத்தம் ஒரு மிக காரணமா இருக்கு. அவங்களுடைய அந்த அலையாத்தி காடுகளுக்குள்ளேயோ அந்த பிராக்டிஸ் வாட்டர் எக்கோசிஸ்டத்துக்குள்ளேயோ அவங்க போக முடியாது. அதுக்கான சூழலும் இருக்கு. அவங்க பாரம்பரியமா நடந்து செய்த வழித்தடங்களை வந்து இன்னைக்கு வந்து இறால் பண்ணைகள் மறிச்சிருக்கு. குறிப்பா முள் வெட்டி போடுறது அப்படிங்கிறத ஒண்ணு வச்சிருக்காங்க. இன்னொன்னு, இந்த பகுதிகளில் தலித் மக்கள் போனா சாதிய வன்மத்தோட அவங்கள திட்டக்கூடிய ஒரு முறைங்கிறது இருக்கு. அப்ப ஒட்டுமொத்தமா இதை நம்ம என்ன புரிஞ்சுக்க வேண்டி இருக்குன்னா, இந்த ஒட்டுமொத்த இறால் பண்ணை உரிமையாளர்கள் மற்றும் அது சார்ந்து இருக்கக்கூடிய எல்லாமே என்னன்னா இந்த சாதிய சமூகத்தினுடைய ஒரு பகுதியாகத்தான் இருக்கு அப்படிங்கிறத வந்து நம்ம புரிஞ்சுக்க வேண்டியதா இருக்கு. இதை நான் எப்படி சொல்ல விரும்புறேன் அப்படின்னா, இங்க இருக்கக்கூடிய அந்த சாதிய சமூகத்துக்கிட்ட மொத்த நிலங்களுமே என்டையர் அவங்களுடைய லேண்ட்லார்ட்ஷிப்பும் அவங்க கிட்டதான் இருக்கு. அரசியல் அதிகாரம் இருக்கு. சிறு விவசாயிகளை கூட அவங்க வந்து ஈவன் அது சிறு விவசாயிகள் எப்படி நிலம் போகுது அப்படின்னா, பெரும் நிலப்பகுதியில உள்ளதுல நான் இறால் பண்ண ஆரம்பிக்கிறேன். அப்ப பக்கத்துல உள்ள சிறு விவசாயிகளுடைய நிலங்கள் வந்து ஓர்ப்பு தன்மையா மாறுது. இந்த சூழல்ல அவங்க வேற விவசாயம் பண்ண முடியாது, வருமானத்துக்கு வழி கிடையாது. அப்ப அந்த நிலங்களையும் வித்துட்டு போக வேண்டிய சூழல் தான் இருக்கு. அதுதான் இங்க இருக்கு. இன்னொன்னு, தலித் மக்களோ பழங்குடி மக்களோ அவங்க இயற்கையை வந்து ஒரு வருமானம் ஈட்டக்கூடிய பொருளா பார்க்கல, ஒரு கல்ச்சுரல் ஸ்பேஸா, அவங்களோட ஒரு பகுதியா, ஒரு அங்கமா அவங்க பார்த்துக்கிட்டு இருக்காங்க. ஆனா நில உடைமை சமூகம்ங்கிறது அதை ஒரு எக்ஸ்போர்ட் வேல்யூக்கானது. ஏன்னா அவங்க ஆல்ரெடி தலித்துகளை வந்து ஒரு பாண்டட் லேபர்ஸா வச்சிருந்தாங்க. அவங்க ஆல்ரெடி அந்த மைண்ட் செட்ல இருந்து பார்க்கும்போது தொடர்ந்து அந்த மனநிலை தான் இங்க இறால் பண்ணைகளை நடத்துறதுக்கும் ஆதிக்கம் செலுத்துறதுக்குமான மிக காரணமா இருக்கு. நம்ம இந்திய சமூகத்தை பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் தலித்துகளுக்கும் மீனவர்களுக்கும் பிரச்சனை இல்லையா அப்படின்னு கேட்டா இருக்கு. அது ரிசோர்ஸ் கான்ஃபிளிக்ஸ், அது அவங்க சுமூகமா தீர்த்துக்கிறாங்க. அவங்க 2 பேருமே ஆல்மோஸ்ட் சேம் கண்டிஷன்ஸ் தான் இருக்காங்க. நான் முன்னாடியே சொன்னது போல இந்த இறால் பண்ணை உரிமையாளர்கள் மீனவர்களுக்கு கடல்ல மட்டும்தான் உரிமை, தலித்துகளுக்கு எந்த உரிமையும் கிடையாது அப்படிங்க இந்த எக்கோசிஸ்டத்துல கிடையாது. ஏன்னா அவங்க காலங்காலமா தலித்துகள் எந்த நிலம் வச்சிருக்கதையோ எந்த உரிமைகள் வச்சிருக்கதையோ ஏத்துக்கல. ஸ்டில் அவங்க அந்த மனநிலையில தான் இருக்காங்க. இந்த ஒட்டுமொத்த நிகழ்வுனால என்ன ஆகுதுன்னா தொடர்ந்து இப்ப அதிகரிக்கக்கூடிய இறால் பண்ணைகள் இந்த 2 மக்களையும் ஒடுக்கக்கூடியதா இருக்கு. அவங்க அடிப்படை உரிமைகளை பறிக்குது. குறிப்பா மீனவ மக்களுடைய அடிப்படை வாழ்வாதார உரிமைகளை பறிக்குது. அவங்களுடைய உணவு இறையாண்மையை பறிக்குது. படகுகள் நிறுத்த முடியல. இதுல தொடர்ந்து அவங்க ஒரு சட்ட ரீதியாகவும் போனா கூட நான் ஏற்கனவே சொன்ன மாதிரி ஃபேப்ரிகேட்டட் கேசஸ் அவங்களுக்கு எதிராக வைக்கப்படுது. தொடர்ந்து ஒரு ஒடுக்குதலை சந்திச்சுக்கிட்டே இருக்க வேண்டியதா இருக்கு. இதை வெறும் சூழலியல் பிரச்சனை பிளஸ் சமூக பிரச்சனை அப்படிங்கிறத விட இது என்டையர் சிஸ்டத்தோட ஒரு பிரச்சனையா இருக்கு. ஈவன் 10 ஹெக்டேருக்கு மேல இருந்தா இறால் பண்ணைகள் எஃபுலன்ட் ட்ரீட்மெண்ட் பாண்ட் ஐஎம்பி இன்டகிரேட்டட் மேனேஜ்மெண்ட் பிளான் அப்படிங்கிறது பண்ணணும் அப்படின்னு சொல்லுது. ஆனா இங்க இறால் பண்ணை உரிமையாளர்கள் என்ன பண்றாங்கன்னா அந்த 10 ஹெக்டேர் இறால் பண்ணைய 5 இறால் பண்ணையா பிரிச்சு 2 ஹெக்டேர் வச்சு வேற பேர்ல லைசன்ஸ் வாங்கி இன்னைக்கு நடத்தக்கூடிய சூழல் தான் இருக்கு. ஸோ இதை முழுக்க முழுக்க மீனவ மக்களுக்கு எதிராக, தலித் மக்களுக்கு எதிராக, கடலோரங்களில் வாழக்கூடிய பல லட்சக்கணக்கான மக்களுக்கு எதிராக அவங்களுடைய காலநிலை மாற்றத்தால் அவங்க சந்திக்கக்கூடிய பிரச்சனைகளை இன்னும் அதிகப்படுத்தக்கூடியதா, உணவு இறையாண்மைக்கு எதிரானதாகத்தான் இருக்கு. நன்றி.
Thank you so much, Pradeep. It is undoubtedly one of the best presentations and very comprehensive presentation on that actually is detailing out. Brilliant work. Thank you so much for that effort, because it's something where you have brought in your heart the core issue, coming from a Dalit community, coming from a historically oppressed community. We understand it is extremely important for that research prism to primarily address the issue of caste. So you've actually added almost 7 issues into the framework that we were talking about with 7 issues. Now, caste becomes extremely important. Militarization, another question that you have very clearly addressed. I think how you talked about false charges being put on fish workers to take them out, and so that these aquaculture farms can establish bigger. It's an theoretically entire question of militarization that is part of the state connivance in doing this. The drinking water depletion. It is one thing for us to talk about pollution of land and water, and another to understand how is it that aquaculture farms have caused massive scale of drinking water crisis, usable water, potable water crisis in most of these coastal areas. I think you have brought that in very clearly. The cultural impact, the damage to the intertidal area. This is this is a crux of the traditional fishery existence, traditional fishing existence. Intertidal areas are very, very significant to our people's existence in the coast. And I think that impact has been migration pathways you spoke about. And you actually, the whole division into 3 different frameworks was very, very helpful. Thank you, Pradeep. You have definitely, enhanced the entire webinar's stake and stature by bringing in this presentation. Thank you very much for that. I was saying in the chat that I don't have the heart to stop such a brilliant presentation, but we have to do it only because of the fact that we are time constrained. We will move to the next presentation from Indonesia. Thank you once again, Pradeep Alangovan. We will go to Susan. Susan from Kiara. Susan is here representing Kiara, and also she has been working with Indonesia, Malaysia, the entire stretch of Southeast Asian countries. Kiara is an organization that has had immense experience, a young team of people, of course, and has done phenomenal work in the region to contribute to the perspectives from the community, perspectives from traditional fishers, coastal ecology, and marine ecology issues, has also immensely contributed to World Forum of Fisher Peoples perspectives and work in the past. Thank you very much, Susan, for coming on board. Over to you.
Okay, so thank you, Vijay. Hello, everyone. My name is Susan from Kiara. By today, I would like to share the perspective on what's going on in Indonesia, especially the shifting coming from capture to aquaculture. I have a presentation, but I would like to ask our comrade to share my PPT. I will go briefly, actually. The thing is, in Indonesia context, there is a brand of crisis related to the food, especially if it's coming for some specific food, which is nowadays become really important for Indonesia, especially. So it started in 1990 when our government really concerned about the shrimp expansion, especially Paname at that time. It's become really the things that move people, especially for Kiara, to more focus to speak about the aquaculture itself. At that time in 1990, there is a massive expansion that destroy many mangrove forests, and it happens also in one of our friends in Lampung di Pasena. At that time, there is a mechanism of nucleus core, which is coming from the big company coming from Thailand, Chalan Pokpan, and then it grabbed. There is a lot of human right violation at that time. Not only that people are being pushed to produce the shrimp only, but also how the company at that time become more powerful than the government itself. So the thing is, there is a branding which comes up nowadays that the capture is already overexploited somehow. But the thing is, we cannot see this is only as the single issues, because there is a lot of multiple aspects that make the capture fisheries, it's more decreasing because as we see that we notify there is a lot of decrease with the total amount of the fisher folk, traditional fisher folk, especially in Indonesia. So from 2.6 million peoples now in Indonesia, we only have 2.4 million traditional fisher folk that exists and left in Indonesia. Next. The thing is, the reason why there is a lot of decreasing of the total amount of fisher folk because of the ocean grabbing, which has happened a lot in our coastal. It starts from a lot of massive and mega project of development, starting from mining, reclamation project, and also tourism, and also mega port, a lot of giant seawall project. And then one thing which is sometimes, to be honest, we are missing to talk about is about the expansion of aquaculture. Not only in shrimp, but in many commodity in Indonesia. Next, I would like also to share that this is our analysis in the zonation spatial planning that exists in Indonesia. So we notify that, for example, like in Sumatra, there is a lot of project of aquaculture, which is carry on. And also, can you next the slide, please? Like this. So as you can see, there is a lot of issues of ocean grabbing that comes up in the Indonesia zonation spatial planning that exists in our country. As you can see, we're still dealing with a lot of things, but for cultivation and pond, the expansion spread almost in everywhere, especially in west of Indonesia, west part of Indonesia. We just noticed that mostly the expansion of ponds although this is mostly it's shrimp, actually, Fanami, happen in Sumatra, Java, and then I think Kalimantan. Maybe you can move to another slide. The thing is, we do understand that the reason why the government wants to do expansion in Java, for example, in Sumatra, because there is the need to export the aquaculture product directly to the high demand country. For example, for shrimp, it goes to Japan, US, and Europe. It is very important because we don't see yet in the, for example, like in the Sulawesi, like in Papua, we haven't seen that there is any potential of expansion of shrimp ponds because it will cost highly production need if they do have the ponds in the east part of Indonesia. Meanwhile, the processing company mostly coming or placed in Java. So to cutting loss the production, our government focus only in the west part of Indonesia, Sumatra, Java, and Bali, and then West Nusa Tenggara. Next to another part, you can read it actually. This is only how we're bridging the issues of ocean grabbing that happens in Indonesia nowadays. Next to another slide. So the most interesting thing which is now happened. This is Sulawesi. There is no ponds expansion in here. Next. Next again. Sorry. Papua, of course, there's no. The thing is important that we really try to achieve what mentioned in the blue economy, how the world is going to consolidate. I don't know if this is the right word or not, but try to meet between the capture fish and aquaculture. Try to talking also about the renewable energy and shipping industry and then so on. But the thing is, they only focus on how the Indonesian can produce a lot of food in order to fulfill the demand from another country. So we feel that we are being part of only the producer without concerning about our sovereignty, without concerning about our food itself, and then of course we're losing a lot of things, especially related to the natural resources, because at that time there is a lot of mangrove destruction in the coast. Next. Under the blue economy, our government tried to put into lower or local national regulation. Nowadays, we have a lot of things which is ongoing on, a lot of regulation that carry on by the government. One of the important regulation now that become the umbrella of the ocean grabbing issues, it's job creation law, which is pushed by the government during COVID-19. Under this regulation, it connected to the blue economy, where the Ministry of Marine Affairs put the blue food mechanism for 2020 until 2024 in order to strengthening the resilience and sustainability of seafood production, especially in aquaculture. Next. So beside of that, there is also very important issues that comes up during we analyze this concept of the blue food, because the concern of our government is only try to identify where there is area that able to be expanded and change into the aquaculture area. So it's become very challenging because now there is big issues where if the government going to put the label of the area of aquaculture, for example, and they need to protect this area, they will put as the national strategic area. Many area that already labeled as the national strategic area, it's going to be very hard for us to change the area or to intervene or to decide or to give the suggestion what is national strategic area it should be for. So it's very hard now for Kiara or for Indonesia fisher folk, both men and women, to intervene or to give a suggestion to the government about this. Next slide about Indonesia fisheries productivity. Actually, this is comes up from, although this is from FAO report, it show, no, this is coming from the Ministry of Marine Affairs, sorry. So this is coming from the Ministry of Marine Affairs. As you can see, there is a lot of increasing amount of marine aquaculture in 2023. But the thing is, there is also increasing also in 2017 until 2022. But the problem is this data, which is coming from Ministry of Marine Affairs, we believe that this data coming from the big fishing vessel or industrial fishing vessel. Because in Indonesia context, the fisher folk sometimes hard to sell the fish they catch into the auction place. Not every area in Indonesia have or owned proper auction place. Next, so this is the strategic plan of Directorate General of Aquaculture, Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries. It's also shocked everyone, especially for me, because they mentioned that there is a potential land area for aquaculture. It reached 17 million hectares in Indonesia. So it's still debatable because we do believe that though we own it, but this is not really strong data that should be shared by the government, because we push the government only to identify where is the ponds that cannot or did not use anymore. So we can like using again, reutilize or something like that. Despite of start to do the mapping to open the new expansion of aquaculture. So as you can see that this is a lot of hectares of aquaculture expansion in Indonesia. It's going to destroy our mangrove area and then our coastal area. The important thing is now we have a lot of massive number of big project like this, not only in aquaculture. For example, in Manado, our government want to do the reclamation for 90 hectares coastal in Manado. They want to build hotel and tourism. In Surabaya, they are going to open more than 10 hectares of reclamation project. So there is a lot of massive project like this. So the government wants to push the fisher folk to change their occupation from capture to aquaculture, because there is a lot of massive project like that. They cannot catch the fish, they cannot go to the sea anymore because they cannot land their vessel because of it. It's already changed into tourism project and so on. So it's really hard for the fisher folk to keep their identity as fisher folk. So next thing, the thing is the Ministry of Marine Affairs, their target to produce 10 million tons of shrimp export. It means it's going to grow 15% per year with the total funding 25 trillion. It's mentioned in our national state budget. The interesting thing is mostly the money coming from the PPP. Yeah, it's gonna be very hard for the fisher folk, the fish farmer, because it's gonna be owned by the big company, not by us, not by people. It's going owned by the big company. Next, into the map, the location and commodity plan for distribution of freshwater and marine aquaculture. As you can see, this is the bridging of the map, the mapping that mentioned by the Minister of Marine Affairs. There is a lot of area that already like push and promote. And
yeah, Angela,
we
may
see
I
that
disturb you for a while? I was contacted by Herman to on the workshop to be submit as
okay, I will finalize Vijayan. Okay. So the last thing, it's a spatial planning. It's going to be very massive. Nowadays, we have some of the issues which just comes up because of the expansion of aquaculture. For example, one in Jeneponto, there is a pollution which is dealt by the fisherwoman. There is big, massive company. They open the aquaculture area and then they pollute the seaweed area of a fisherwoman. And then we also have one criminalization issues in Karimun Jawa when the government use or push the people who criticize this project and they put as what is it? Yeah, the government criminalize these people because they do critics about the expansion of aquaculture in Karimun Jawa. The last thing, our call, it's maybe not that simple, but we notified that we should try to bring on the solidarity among us to stop liberalization that focus on meeting the global demand, especially for fish or food production. But the thing is, we are the people who being left behind in this big, massive demand. The last thing, it's also that we need to protect and fulfill the right of fisherfolk. The last thing that we still see that the blue economy is how the government try to legalize the mechanism of ocean grabbing, only push on the production without concerning holistic approach, holistic way of living that already carry on by fisherfolk from generation to the generation. If we keep on this, on the last slide, there is one big area that already sinking in Central Java. We see that if this aquaculture ponds keep on carry on, it could drown people, not only our friends in Central Java, but also me itself. So let's gather solidarity to stop this kind of thing, only to fulfill the global demand. Thank you. Thank you, Vijayan. Sorry.
No, thank you, Susan. Susan, you actually brought in the entire conversation from the perspective of the broader issues of ocean grabbing that you started with, and then you went into the specifics of what is happening in Indonesia and how that is impacting the different communities and the landscape there. I don't want to get into any comments at this stage. I think we have to rush through this. Michael, we are hoping that it's okay for you to stay on. Okay, all right, Michael has responded in the chat. Thank you very much, Mr. Michael Fakri, for being with us. I was just saying in the chat that we are actually rushing through many of these presentations. They are really worthwhile presentations, and it's important for all of us to grab as much as we can. So kindly forgive us if we overshoot the time by probably another half an hour from the scheduled time frame, which is about 45 minutes from now. So I'll quickly move into the next presenter. Siddharth Chakravarti has been a researcher associated with the fisheries movements in India. The fisher movement in India has been part of the research collective and many of the others. He has been an author, writer, a research scholar, currently pursuing his PhD. And his one of the core areas of work has been on aquaculture, trying to understand that. So when we also wrote to Siddharth said very politely that, my work is not, the entire framework of larger framework of capture to culture, etc. It has been an effort to study both academically and from a community perspective, the impact on ecology, communities, all of that. So I think that's where Siddharth is coming from. Siddharth, thank you for joining us. And quickly over to you.
Zindabad Satyo. Hello, everyone. You can hear me okay, yeah, Vijay? Thumbs up? Okay. Very happy to be here, especially for the last 2.5 hours, have been listening to many old and new comrades. Saw many of you at the GA7 in Delhi in 2017, was part of the organizing team then, and very happy to see that all of these things are happening on these very important subjects leading up to the GA8 in Brazil. I think I really don't like the word expert because actually all the expertise has already been presented. So the role of actually being an expert so-and-so is to actually take the information from the community and present it back, which is not really a very good title at all to have. But I will anyway try and speak about some of the points that are pertinent to the research that I do, but also to the fishers movement in the Asia Pacific region and broader globally as well. I think there is the shift from capture to culture. So I really wanted to just take a moment to think about what is the shift that we are actually talking about and to try and bring a little bit more specificity to the shift that we are discussing. So for example, just to take an example from India, 1947 was independence, and 1947, 1948, you already have fisheries research institutes beginning to try and do culture fisheries practices. And that kind of, with hatcheries, induced breeding, all of these kind of budget allocations, while marine fisheries is taking off with international cooperation and aid, culture fisheries is also silently growing on the side. And 90s is really the decade in which culture fisheries takes off. And in many countries, at least for the last 25, 30 years, has already surpassed capture fisheries. We've had two booms in all of the Asia Pacific countries, first of black tiger prawn in shrimp, followed by the Pacific white shrimp since 2005. So that's 20 years as well. And then in carp fisheries, really, the Asia Pacific region is the heartland that is supplying and producing most of the world's inland freshwater species. So this shift to capture to culture, I just wanted to briefly talk about potentially what might be therefore new. So I think I'm going to touch on 5 points to think about what is new. I think one is the species. So a lot of people have spoken about shrimp. So just beyond shrimp and beyond shrimp. What are all the activities that have developed in culture fisheries in our parts of the world? So also trying to think about beyond farming. Pradeep spoke very brilliantly along with a lot of the other presentations. And I know the Indian context well, so I can say Lakshmi Akka also in speaking about all of the impacts, but also beyond that. So I just want to briefly touch on that. I think markets, again, there is a need to pay attention to not just foreign markets, but also urban domestic markets and the rising consumption of certain kinds of fish within urban and peri-urban markets within our own countries. I think the regions, of course, for all of you, marine fisheries and coastal regions are of most importance. But the shift to culture fisheries is also wider than just the coastal area. And I think I'm just going to briefly try and present that. And I think the last point is really the actors. There's been papers that have already been pasted in the chat. Jones's study on the World Bank. And, we've got multiple studies that have been done by the communities themselves on mapping the state, etc. But I want to pick up on Pradeep's presentation and try and extend that the actors are also domestic elites. In India, it's upper caste and dominant communities in the agrarian settings, but it could be other elites in the Asia Pacific region. And I think it's very important to also pay attention to these people who are now shaping the new culture fisheries. So in each one of them, I'm going to quickly walk through the points to keep it brief. I think in species, obviously, we are seeing shrimp production expand. This is in coastal areas, but also away from coastal areas in agricultural lands. But we're also seeing the rise of shrimp production happening in intensive and super intensive systems, which are away from open ponds, into cemented houses, into kind of cement ponds where recirculating aquaculture systems and vertical farming systems are increasingly coming in, which is going to only increase the footprint of shrimp farming, already more than intensive open water kind of earthen pond systems. The second is that beyond shrimp, there is also a rise of lots of other carnivorous systems, species. This is both in inland and marine. So for example, at least in India, from the budget allocations, you can see species like cobia, murrels, a lot of golden pompano. These are extremely carnivorous species which are being grown again in cages and in coastal areas. And, Vandana Shiva's points on fish farming, feed conversion ratios, inputs, I think there is a need to pay attention to also beyond shrimp in looking at this kind of conversions happening. And the third, of course, is the general shift towards monoculture, just like we've had with shrimp. A lot of our culture fisheries used to be 3 or 6 species of major and minor carps. A lot of them were plant-based kind of aquacultures, which have actually helped a lot of domestic food security in the past. But you see the shift towards tilapias and pangas happening in ways that are quite monocultures. And also, to be able to undertake those monoculture processes, just like in agriculture, you also have now genetic trait selections coming in. You have enhancing of certain genetic traits, happening domestically by science institutions as well. And given that this is the commons, this is a very dangerous trait that also goes into affecting domestic kind of ecologies. So then beyond farming, just to pay attention to 3 kinds of things, a lot of the growth that came in culture fisheries previously, especially carp fisheries and other kind of culture fisheries, of course, has been intensive. It has come based on hatcheries. But in relation to what's happening with new species coming in and new ways of farming coming in of existing species, there's a lot of processing that is growing, and processing in itself consumes water, is very labor intensive, generates a lot of waste, and creates land grabs. So, even beyond farms, processing is something that is growing immensely, especially as we shift markets from wet markets for fresh fish towards more cold supply chains. The processing is the point at which the perishability of fish becomes a commodity. And that is a very intensive cycle to be able to extend that life of the fish to distant markets. The second is hatcheries. So, we've had small scale hatcheries. We've also had big hatcheries. But with exotic species and new ways of genetic traits being kind of induced into the fish that is being grown, we are seeing things like nucleus breeding centers, broodstock multiplication centers, more kind of intellectual property-based kind of hatchery technology beginning to grow in many parts of our world. And it's important that these, again, are on waterfronts. They are very big land grabbers, and they also tend to have the impact of exotic species and manipulation of indigenous species, etc., happening within these premises. And the third, of course, is the manufacturing of feed. India, for example, produces never mind the numbers, but feed manufacturing is a big footprint that is growing in lots, and it's not just for aquaculture; it's also for poultry. But things like fish oil, etc., are also exported overseas, and so there is also that sector that is growing in relation to culture fisheries. Now, in terms of markets, just beyond the idea of local markets versus foreign markets, I just wanted to point out that there are maybe 3 shifts that are happening. One is that there is also a shift happening to urban domestic markets and foreign markets. So, sea bass, for example, or pangases, for example, are not mainly exported out of India, but a lot of the restaurants, a lot of the service industry that is growing around fast food deliveries, etc., rely on these kind of species which are easy to cook, have a wide application over a wide number of fast food kind of supply chains. And there is a demand that is also growing domestically from a certain very small section, but one which has a lot of spending power, the urban class, upper middle class, and richer people within urban centers. And then, of course, you have the extension of these markets into foreign markets. So while, for example, America and China remain big markets for Asia Pacific shrimp, We are also seeing extension into various markets in other parts of the world, including the development of domestic markets for shrimp. So, shrimp is now very often being spoken. There's a global shrimp council that is trying to replace poultry with shrimp in domestic markets and coming up with chilled value chains. So I think there's also that we are beginning to see on domestic markets. It's just not foreign. I think the shift is accompanied by a shift from wet fresh markets. So a lot of the carp species used to be, trucked overnight within a 300-400 kilometer radius to wet markets. But we are now increasingly seeing the processing aspect developing, where groups like Licious or Captain Fresh, some of the brands in India, increasingly buy these fish, process them, fillet them, put them into packages, and then they're available on an app. And so there is the general shift towards chilled and cold markets away from fresh markets, which again means that a certain class of people domestically beginning to consume fish that is not the coastal people and that is not the local people around fisheries value chains, including in aquaculture, and also then foreign markets, of course. And then I think, just not to go into the value chain too much terminology, but supermarkets and the same idea with the service technology of restaurants and app-based food deliveries is that supermarkets increasingly require certain commodities in certain forms, and so processing and the value chain further upstream to the farmers and even to the hatcheries starts begin to be driven by these kind of buyer imperatives on what is happening. So those are the shifts that are happening quite a bit as well. And finally, I think beyond state-based actors, we are seeing, sorry, Vijay, do I still have time? I've just lost. Yeah, good. So just in terms of actors, I think Pradeep's point has to be taken into consideration very centrally. And I want to extend that point that it's not just landed and caste elites in the farming, but this kind of capital, and in India's case, capital equals to caste, kind of power extends across the value chain. So for example, in Andhra Pradesh, which is the powerhouse of aquaculture in India, and probably one of the most densely farmed and processing and feed hubs in the world, actually, farmers, yes, they are from upper caste, but all of the domestic big firms are owned, for example, mainly by Raju, Reddy, and Kamma groups, which are, a hegemonic, powerful group which have social power at the domestic state level, exert power at national politics, and drive transnational industries in pharmaceuticals, films, IT, etc., etc. So there's a lot of these groups beyond the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank and the state who themselves invest and drive a lot of the markets with their own profits. And there is a need to pay attention to that very aspect across the culture value chain. The second, of course, is that aquaculture still is quite dicey and quite unpredictable compared to agriculture in its predictability. And so we are seeing a lot of venture capitalists, seed funders, Internet of Technology firms all entering with ideas of precision aquaculture, satellite-based imagery, very cutting-edge insect technologies, things like this, which is private capital that obviously drives short-term financialization of aquaculture. And these bypass state funding mechanisms completely directly through the domestic capital and multinational groups. So it's important to pay attention to them as well. And then feed in itself, given the rise of aquaculture, which is now more than capture fisheries, if you think about feed at its most efficient also being 1.2, 1.3 FCR, the amount of feed that is required by aquaculture is more than the aquaculture that is produced. Part of this is fisheries, about 30%. The rest is soy and wheat. So we're also seeing soy and wheat lobbies from America, for example, or, the Brazilian beef agri-feed industries, which are seeing climate change and a decline in consumption of beef, moving into shrimp feed and fish feed. And so they are also driving the market as actors themselves, which is a big change that is happening away from, more domestically formulated feeds towards like larger players. And so finally, I think, where are the regions where the new culture fisheries? I mean, obviously, land-based aquaculture along coastal lands is increasing. With carnivorous species, there's also cage-based aquaculture in nearshore waters that is increasing in a big way. but also the commons of reservoirs and rivers and estuarine regions and lakes, which were also commons for a lot of non-marine fisher people, are also being auctioned by the state back to private players. So for example, in India, as of 2017, all the major dams have been brought under an auctioning process where the state has rules now to auction it to the highest bidder, who then introduces on subsidies, cages, etc., and grows very carnivorous or intensive monocultures. I think the capture dimensions of the new culture fisheries, of course, are that we have to continue to pay attention to marine fishing gears, fish meal, fish oil, and the rise of low-value bycatch from existing bottom trawling, but also new deep-sea resources and small pelagic species, mackerel, carangere, sardines. All of these are becoming big in the fish meal, fish oil industry, and India is a growing power. There was a moratorium on a lot of these fisheries, but they have recently been lifted, which means that we are going to see a rise in fish meal oil manufacturing. And this will be common across a lot of these parts of the world. I think there is a shift in the purchasing power from marine fishery in itself. So small fishers, women vendors, etc., are being bypassed because of the capital required for fish meal, fish oil manufacturing. To more vertically integrated actors, they could be exporters of frozen fish, but they could also be surimi, fish meal, fish oil manufacturers, which then feed forward into the shrimp feed and the aqua feed industry. And of course, there is a food insecurity from dry and fresh fish to, as I've said, the change in markets to fish meal, fish oil, surimi, and frozen. So just my last slide. I mean, these are things that have already been said, but I'm just kind of laying it out. I think the old fights of capture fisheries, they are very, very relevant and continue to be very relevant for the fisher people, because what happens in capture fisheries is a crucial ingredient for the growth of culture fisheries in terms of fish meal, fish oil. I think on culture fisheries, we've spent a lot of focus in the 90s and 2000s focusing on the international institutions. I think a lot of this is on domestic elites and domestic capital, and we have to start paying attention to them, because a lot of these people, including as consumers, are driving the shift. Pradeep spoke about this, so it's a similar point. I think, aquaculture affects tribal people, it affects Dalit people, it affects landless farm workers, it affects inland, estuarine, marine, anybody who's in these and dependent on those ecologies is affected, including a lot of them becoming workers in the very intensive processing sector. So those cross-sectoral actions and solidarities become very important. I think the Asia-Pacific thing that has been convened is obviously very important, because this is the heartland of capture and culture fisheries. And, this region has a lot of commonalities, big populations, relatively low GDP per capita, a lot of not having access fisheries from foreign fleets, domestic fisheries, domestic elites driving the industry. There are different levels of vertical integration, etc., but still challenges remain common. And obviously, capital and commodities in aquaculture and culture fisheries are increasingly transnational. So what happens with the Peruvian anchovita fishery, affects the Indian fish meal, fish oil, and shrimp prices and the fishers here. So the G8 in that global sense is also very important. So all of this is already on your framework, but this was just a summary. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Siddharth. Thank you for bringing in, you started it bang on with the whole historical evolution of aquaculture. Especially, you brought in South Asia a lot more from your experience of having studied some of the aquaculture work in India. Also, thank you for bringing in the entire financial, market capital angles to it. Who are the drivers of this? What kind of markets are they producing? I think these are very, very essential for even the community to have a very comprehensive understanding about, because until unless we are able to identify where this is coming from, just by rhetorically saying that the World Bank has pushed for it, or the international financial institutions have been pushing for it, does not in itself expose the whole capitalist perspective of a worldview that has, as Dr. Shiva put it, as monocultures of the mind. I think that is where you brought in the whole discourse. Thank you for bringing in all that. I would have liked to at least speak 3 minutes about some of the key points that you brought in. And some of those I would definitely want to learn more in terms of your publications, etc. If there are a couple of those that have already not come in, You've been an author with Occupation of the Coast and others. Some of those links are already here. But if there are any papers, please put some of the presentations and the papers here. Thank you very much, Siddharth, once again for joining us. I know it's a very, very odd hour for you to have joined early in the morning from there and have stepped in for this.
No, very happy to be here. And unfortunately, I'll be leaving. So thank you, everyone. I just have to run to another meeting, but I'll catch up.
You mentioned that you had another presentation coming up. So it's unfortunate that we couldn't get Dr. Liam on board for this one. It would have been great to also have Liam Gambling joining us. But definitely another time we will have all of you on board. I think some of these are also pushing us to have greater, more in-depth conversations. And I think that's where it has to head towards. And the last slide of yours is extremely important for movements to also understand. Preferential access, for example, is a very, very important criteria for the battle of the traditional fishers in looking at it. Yeah, thank you, Siddharth, for that. Paula, Dr. Paula Satisabal from Colombia. Paula has been a friend, a comrade of the movement for the past few years. She's part of the Participatory Action Research network globally that has been initiated in the last few months and years, looking at how is it that participatory action research by academicians, concerned activists, scholars can actually bring in more strength to the arguments of the communities that are fighting for ocean, marine, coastal rights in the past and across the globe. She is a political ecologist and a human geographer working on environmental governance, geographies of the sea, and social justice. In particular, she is interested in the changing relationships between people and oceans with a focus on small-scale fishing communities. Her work has examined socio-environmental conflicts and their intersections with coastal and marine governance interventions in Colombia, especially. I think it's important to introduce you as you are. Don't feel formal about it. Paula actually came into work with some of us during the entire Blue Economy tribunals that were hosted in 2020-21 period. Post that she has been very much associated as both as a researcher, scholar, and advisor to many of our work. Paula has been recently part of the South African Blue Economy Tribunal process too, as a jury member and a documenter researcher there. Thank you, Paula, for joining us. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Greetings to everyone, and thank you for that introduction. I feel very honored to be here and also to join this conversation. I want to thank the Coastal Action Network and all the organizers for this invitation, and also the previous speakers for so many insightful interventions and ideas. I think it's been an inspiring session, but also lots of information, lots to think about. So definitely, I hope there's more follow-up discussions for us to continue as we plan for the Global Assembly and other processes. I also want to thank the interpreters, and please let me know if I'm speaking too fast. I can slow down. So yeah, as we have been discussing, there's these big organizations are promoting these initiatives on the expansion of aquaculture, framed as this blue transformation or blue revolution. And I think although there's so many different layers and complexities, it is important that perhaps something that to add to the conversation, that this is a lot based on a myth, on this myth that population growth is leading to food scarcity and environmental destruction. So it's kind of like this idea that it's because of population growth that we had problems with overfishing and that we have now problems with climate change, but not really looking into the political and economic context that is actually behind these problems. And it's interesting because this myth is being used to legitimize the increase of food production, framing production as central to securing food security. And this turns food security into a technical problem. So it's about how to create more opportunities for production and efficiency, and how to expand technologies to be able to do this. And this, of course, brings also new actors, as Siddhartha was discussing, from different private sectors, different capitalists, different sectors that perhaps were not really engaging with fisheries, that are coming to the conversation on how to support this, how to make this transition. And all this, of course, is also linked within this very, and discussed in a very capitalist way, in terms of maximizing production, but also minimizing costs of production, minimizing the cost of labor, and also the risk of disease, which is a big, big concern in a lot of these initiatives. So I wanted to share with you, like this is, you see in the presentation, this is just an image from a report that was written by the Nature Conservancy, so one of these big conservation organizations, and Encourage Capital, who are analyzing opportunities for investments. And it shows a bit of a mapping of the aquaculture expansion and possibilities. And I was thinking, and I was very grateful that Siddharth also brought this in, because a lot of the discussion we've been having has been based on more coastal interventions. But what we're seeing is that aquaculture is very diverse, and that we're talking about a diverse sectors that includes complex supply chains. So just to give you a bit of an overview, in this image you have even, like, as we were discussing before, offshore interventions, but there's also systems that are more inland. So it also links a lot of the questions more outside of the coast, that are relying on inputs from oceans, also different nets and pens and cages that are being promoted. So we need to also connect this conversation with these technological innovations that are also contributing to the developing of this supposed major transformation. And what is also interesting here is that, and perhaps also going back to this idea that this is a myth, is that there's, for instance, if we look at the amount of food that is being produced around the world, there's enough food and to feed everyone. And actually, in 2021, a report from UNEP on the Food Waste Index revealed that in 2019, 14% of the food that was being produced got lost between the harvest and retail, and then 70% went to waste, primarily in higher income countries, from retail to consumer levels. But it's important that also noting from what Siddharth was highlighting, that this is also, we are going from a model that perhaps used to be more export oriented, but now there's a growth also in the domestic use of a lot of these production. And this then also reveals something that is very important and links to Pradip's point on the importance of thinking of caste, and is that the access to food and to land is shaped by all these other complex relations. It's shaped by class, by caste, by race, by gender relations, and we cannot separate them. We cannot think about food just by increasing production as a solution without really dealing with all these other complexities that have been highlighted by all of the speakers today. So in looking at this approach and these complex relations, we also need to think about, and perhaps is linking to some of the previous points, of these bringing together the struggles of land and coastal and marine fishers and farmers. Because what we are seeing here is that there's a lot of connections, and it is through the complex commodity chains and supply chains that are being produced. This is just also from this report. They're mapping the different actors, the different market opportunities, and you can see how there's all these new possibilities also for extraction and exploitation. And this is important because although Asia is one of the largest aquaculture producers, accounting for, I think the proportion is like 92% of global production in 2017. In a recent book, Wilma Dunaway and Maria Cecilia Macabuac questioned if this is the case, why is this the region with the hungriest people in the world? also acknowledging that then this idea of production, this idea of more, is actually not leading to resolving the issue. So what is the issue we're trying to solve? Are we solving food security with increasing production? Then this is quite perverse in that not really linking and understanding some of the complexities that were highlighted before by Vandana Shiva and also the previous intervention, but also not really thinking about, sorry?
Paula, slow.
Sorry, not thinking about the connection between these processes and also the relevance of food security. This is not only about increasing access to food, but also how food is produced is central to the cultures and ways of living of coastal communities. So it is not only about the redistribution of what is being produced, but how this is produced in ways that indeed enable space for communities to develop their own political projects, to develop their own life, and to enjoy and protect also their coastal livelihoods and ways of living. And it is important also because there is this long-standing critique that these, in a way, a lot of this framing is a false solution. And the blue economy is filled with these false solutions, these ideas that if we, for instance, expand marine protected areas, that will have more conservation and protection of nature, the idea that we have, that we need more of these production to feed people. And then one of the key elements also of how these false solutions then leads to very complex responses is, for instance, one of the big critiques that was done to aquaculture and to the expansion of aquaculture was the relevance of and the use of wild fish to feed aquaculture production. And then this led paradoxically to a new phase of transition out of wild fish feed, and also linking more closely the commodity chains and the production of aquaculture to monocrops, for instance, to the expansion of soy and using different oils and plant-based commodities to do this transition, linking also these processes, this transition to struggles of peasant populations across Asia, but also Latin America, where soy expansion has been connected to a high increase of displacement, labor exploitation, food insecurity. Moreover, we have something that is also very important and is perhaps also hasn't been mentioned, and is the importance of debt. Because as we were saying and Siddharth discussed, this is not only about large capital, but you also have smaller shrimp farms and other aquaculture projects that local elites and different groups access different debt schemes, microfinance institutions, and local lenders to start these ventures and to start producing some of these farms. And this creates, and is also something perhaps for us to think with, is about the complexity of aquaculture in terms of scale. There's so many different layers, and you have smaller farms that are completely reliant and dependent or on larger ventures. And then you also have the failure of these farms as increasing debt trapped and also leading to the loss of land. We saw also through the interventions in Thailand that the expansion of aquaculture is leading to labor transitions and transitions of fishers to work in aquaculture, but also in other sectors. And in India, this is also linked to the transition to aquaculture is also linked to the destruction of fishing grounds. And as Pradit highlighted very importantly, these vulnerabilities are also increased in terms of class and caste that are so central in Asia. particularly for landless workers and fishers, with many implications also on women and children that perhaps we haven't unpacked in detail because of the time that we have. Moreover, and just wanted to emphasize here that a lot of these testimonies connect to what we heard in relation to the Indian Ocean Blue Economy Tribunals. And this is central because this adds more richness to a lot of the testimonies that were shared during the Blue Economy Tribunals in the Indian Ocean, but also in other blue economy and other ocean fisher peoples tribunals that have taken place, highlighting how the expansion of aquaculture is definitely eroding food sovereignty. And this is, I think there's a lot of important connections also to make. There's, as shown by the report that I was presenting, this link also of conservation organizations that are taking a key role funding and supporting some of these aquaculture interventions. And funding that comes in terms of fisheries improvement initiatives and other interventions that are disregarding severe human rights impacts and cases, which have been, for instance, there is a recent report by Feedback in looking at the expansion of aquaculture in Norway, looking at salmon farming, where they call what is happening there not a blue revolution, but a blue empire, saying that salmon production is actually leading to a lot of human rights abuses that are particularly having major impacts on women fish workers, who are at the same time taking a key role at the forefront, demanding accountability from governments and companies. So this is also adds to the question of who are the actors shaping this shift and how to, in many ways, strategize politically to engage with them and to also make them accountable for their actions. I think this event is vital in us to be able to listen to all these interventions, to expose these false solutions and these myths that are very violent, and this blue washing that is privileging corporate profits over fisher people's needs. And there's an important aspect of linking and exploring how these false solutions that are brought by the blue economy, thinking and strategizing against them also involves building solidarities beyond the fisher movement with workers, with peasant movements, with feminist groups, all of which are also struggling through these similar processes of industrialization. So I will leave it there and also maybe close just by highlighting, as Dr. Hua brilliantly elucidated, we need to stand up for the role of fisher peoples in reproducing food diversity, which is central to food sovereignty and also to the protection of oceans. So thank you, and I look forward to continue listening to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Paula. Dr. Paula actually brought in the whole Blue Revolution framework, went in to speak about how under the garb of sustainability and climate change impacts, etc., how things like aquaculture are brought in as very purely as false solutions, and how the blue economy, the romanticized, glorified norms of blue economy and blue revolution are supposed to justify and legalize a lot of that is going on under the garb of aquaculture. There's, of course, a lot more that she said, and there's already a request in the chat that if you could put this together also as a written presentation, that will immensely contribute to our own documentation, which we will come back to you for help with. So thank you very much, Dr. Paula. Thank you for sitting up, joining us early and being in this webinar. I think it's, we just have two more presentations to go. One is by Jones Spartakus. Jones has been part of the World Forum of Fisher People Youth, and also has been for more than close to almost 3 decades. For his age, that is a very, very long period. As a youngster, as a teenager, he came into the fisher movement from the community, went on to build his skills as a researcher, as someone who is now currently pursuing his PhD from the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Bombay. Jones has been an integral part of the fisher rights movement, has been an ideologue from, if I may say so, from the perspective of bringing in the entire ocean, semantics. I mean, how is it that river valley civilizations are recognized at a time when ocean people are struggling for very survival and existence? And why is it that the ocean civilizations and people's perspectives are not taken into account? He always talks about looking at the land from the sea and not just looking at the sea from the land. Someone with a very, very different set of perspectives. I could see him vehemently agreeing to Dr. Vandana Shiva when she was speaking. Jones has also made presentations to the UN rapporteurs team beforehand. So Michael, Fakri and friends are familiar with Jones's some of the arguments. Jones, over to you. And please know, everybody, that we are actually dropping down on participation. We had more than 100 participants all through, but now I think time is stretching people. People have had to leave their livelihood to be here. But at the same time, we have had a celebrated webinar in that sense, because from coastal Tamil Nadu to, Thailand, we have many groups of people sitting together. Especially beautiful pictures have been shared by comrades about how men and women have been sitting together, and especially women have mobilized a lot more to attend these webinars. And I think because then you can calculate the numbers into multi-folds from the participant list that we can see here. Jones, over to you.
Thank you, Anna, for giving the grassroots youths and all like me in the global spaces. Thanks for CAN and WFFP for also bringing all the grassroots fisher peoples in one place to discuss on the various issues. First of all, whatever I prepared for the presentation, I forgot everything after listening to our Vandana Shiva, because a new perspective has been shaped up. I am audible and clear, no? Am I audible and clear? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So
you're audible. I would just request Arun to change the spotlight and pinning, or I don't know if it is my issue.
It's your end, Priya. It's already done.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. So here, as Vandana Shiva said that we have to call it as factory farming. Because another thing I noticed from all the presentations, that they are using the word food to aquaculture. That is a very bad phenomenon. This is also a colonial mindset. It is not at all a food. First of all, we should not call it as food. It is not at all a food. It is not a food, because it is a commodity like shoes and other commodities like a metal commodity. It is a commodity by an industry. That's all, which fills our stomach, the bag of stomach. It is not at all a food. It is not, food is basically natural made. It is natural, it has life. But here it is not. It is not at all. It is not at all a food. First of all, we should not call it as food. From that we should see this shrimp from from that we should see this shrimp. It is not food. Then what it is? Recently, Pradeep has shared about, recently in the field we saw Dalit women who have been catching prawns, shrimps for the past 2 decades. She was saying that the farm owners has accused her for working on the banks of the shrimp farm, which is in the intertidal, because they said that it is impure, because when the woman walks, it becomes impure, and the shrimp cannot breed. It disturbs the mating of the shrimp, and they accused her, and they detained her, and they also scolded her in very rude manners, since he is from the caste. It's a caste and a women in the way of caste and the way of women. But this poor woman, she was saying me that, son, what can I, whether it is true, because I am also catching prawns. So I was very concerned to that, whether my caste or nothing has to stop it mating. I said it is totally an unargument, Amma. It is not fair at all, because it is not a fellow being. It is not a fellow creature. It's a monster. It can't breed. It is not a male. It is not a female in the prawns. It can't breed. Then she realized that it can't breed. Yeah, it can't breed. It is a lab-made meat. Lab-made meat. So then she realized and said, the next time if he shout at me, I will ask him whether it will breed or not. Here the narrative comes. We have to agree this mindset and see which is food, which is not food from the food sovereignty lens. This food will not satisfy our nutrition or protein to us. First of all, this is not at all a seafood. Again, the markets markets where Siddharth was explaining us. Shrimp is contributing the seafood market. It is not a seafood. Shrimp doesn't contribute to the seafood market. It is not at all a food. It contributes to some other market which satisfy our stomach. It is not a food. So here the problem comes, here the narrative comes. Many people explained about environmental impacts, other thing, and Pradeep and others explained the narratives of from the land and the resource base, how these fisher peoples and those people are dependent upon the resources has been affected as indigenous people. This egalitarian narratives has to come out. So this is what I want to share. First of all, come out of this colonial mindset. There is no demand of nutrition. There is no demand of protein, which in this nation, it is the demand of the market which pushes us to export all these things. Then I will come to a narrative. Then we should also think that agriculture, fisheries is being the allied sector or a subsector of agriculture in many of the Asian states. It comes under the Ministry of Agriculture in many states. Fisheries has come. But now when you see the capture fishing, like whatever the trash fish or the small juvenile fishes like sardines, not juvenile, sardines or anchovies, small anchovies are taken as fish meal for the prawn industries. So it is now actually the subsector, because the trash fish, which we are fighting a lot on the mechanized, now became a good market for this trash fish and also for what we call it as pedigree, no, for the cats and other things. So this has become exactly a new frame of exploitation that is happening on fisheries. It has become a meal for the shrimp farms. Sardine is high protein, cheap protein. Even many of the poor families have been taking this, and the demand of the local, not for the nation, but local and the nation demand and nutrition is solved by one single fish, sardine in India and also in many states, sardine. But now it has become a bisector and a meal for shrimp farms for this lab-made food. So that has to be, again, we have to think of that. Why we are like this? Why we are subsector? Again, going to the WTO, we are kept as non-marketal access, non-agricultural marketal access. We are kept in NAMA, non-agricultural market access. We are kept under industries. Fisheries is kept under industry, like shoe making, metal making, iron making. Fisheries is kept under industry. This makes this narrations, this terminologies, this law-based systematic exploitation has been pushed the nations to make it as industry for the market. Fisheries as an industry for the market. Fisheries as an export commodity. Fish as export commodity. There the problem comes. It has a larger narratives of larger people, the diversification which Vandana has said. A diversification of different people in such a landscape. That's what I always say, as Anna said. See the landscape, coastal landscape from the sea. Standing, the sea should be begin and we should see the sea. You will get a different narrative, diverse people who have been dependent upon this fisheries. I will conclude by this to give a thought. As I said, that presentations are, as Siddharth said, we are not expert. We are not at all experts. We learn from the margins. We learn from the people. We are here to share upon our thought process to make you think critically and be in the struggle to change or reverse the discourse of the colonial mindset. The one thing I want to share is that the corporate industries has created one drink for all, whether it is a Bisleri mineral water. It is not at all a water, drinking water. It's a mineral water for all. There is a mineral Coke, one drink for all. You can drink. There is Lay's chips now. Have you seen a Lay's chips? Chips for all. Wherever I can, for all I'm saying, if I can eat the same in USA, I can eat the same in Africa, I can eat this globally. They're creating a unification of the food systems. I can manage with this. Then another lab meat is that. What is that? Chicken everywhere. Chicken is another lab meat. Uniformal food. Uniformal food. But I will now they are unifying the fish also. Fisheries also as prawn as the fish. I'm trying to say that you can't diversify the fisheries. Ocean is ocean. You can't count the species in the ocean. We here as fisher peoples are being as a defenders of these narratives, colonial narratives on this fisheries as an industries. We are the custodians here to stop these narrations of the food systems, the UN food summits and everything. The terminologies has to be, the colonial terminologies has to be defended, will be defended by us as soon as possible. All the replies and our answers will be in our G8, the General Assembly of WFFP. We will come with a resolution and we will break up this colonial mindset of the fisheries, small scale fisheries, large scale fisheries, post harvest, pre harvest, all these things, terminologies will be broken up. Thank you for all being with us. Be as fisher peoples together to fight for our resources back. Thank you. Thank you for Michael also be here for us till the end for of the grassroots realities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jones, for that. We actually stuck to time. Thank you for that. Also, Michael has had a long day with us, and that's like he's sitting well past midnight. So I don't even want to bring in concluding remarks. But Jones, I think that point about what you said about, I think it's been very effectively put into the chat box by Johnny from the US. He says, stolen suppers from the plates of fisher people to the profit plates of industrial aquaculture. Let us all hear from Michael. Michael has been an academic learner, listener, and a comrade with many of the movements in the past many years. He's based from he's a professor of law at the University of Oregon, but now currently he has been assigned since 2020 as the UN Special Rapporteur on the right to food. The United Nations Special Rapporteur role has actually bestowed upon him a lot more responsibilities to be in that balancing role. But as someone who has always stood with the people and the communities, Michael has played a very, very crucial role in bringing forth some of the conversations from the communities to the tables where they were rarely represented. And I think that is something that he has very effectively done. Thanks to Michael for doing that. He served as an independent advisor to the UN Summit on Food Systems. Then he called on the government of Venezuela to develop a robust plan to address hunger and malnutrition and for an end to the economic sanctions imposed on the country. He's also someone who has been outspoken and has been very clear about this not being a war in Gaza. He has actually very, very, very clearly pointed his fingers and said, in my view, as a UN human rights expert, this is now a situation of genocide. Thank you, Michael, for actually calling a spade and being with the people who have been victimized. Over to you, Michael. We all look forward to your responses to today's.
Thank you so much, and what an honor to be here today. I'm happy also to follow Jones, who always inspires me. And today's an example of what my job is. So as a UN Special Rapporteur on the right to food, I'm an independent expert with the UN. My job is to be the eyes and ears and sometimes good conscience for the UN system to address all matters regarding hunger, malnutrition, and famine from a human rights perspective. And today I listened closely to the experiences in Bangladesh, in Thailand, in Indonesia, and in India. And I was really impressed by the richness of those reports, of those descriptions. And each country, each region, each sub region has its own particular struggle. But it was so interesting to hear the commonalities as well, to hear all the different problems with aquaculture and all the different communities, no matter what shape or form, really resonated with me. And what really resonated with me is what's at stake for fisher peoples and small scale fishers in all these communities is it's an existential battle. So maybe in the UN, they'll use words like livelihood and they'll focus on the economic side of things. But it's so clear from what I've been listening to today and from what I've heard before is what's at stake is a way of life and a way of being and a way of living with the ocean, with the rivers, with the lakes, with the seas. That's what's at stake here. And it was so clear. And then in the second half, it was really helpful then to have different speakers connect the local struggles with the big picture of the global political economy, of what the fight is and who the fight is against. And this is the challenge. The challenge is, as everyone here knows, when people use this language of blue economy, you're up against major financiers, the World Bank, FAO to some degree, all of these organizations, agencies, rich organizations are building a narrative. And to build on what Joan said and what Paula said, that there's this false narrative. And I think the most powerful first step you can take is you have your experiences. I mean, we heard it here today, and you have your narrative, which is true to your traditions and to your relationship with the land and the sea. And the power of your organization is amplifying your narrative. And I think there's two audiences for your story. One, of course, is government. Government is going to be caught up and tempted by the promise of money, capital, and investment. But I think the power of your local organizations and the WFFP more broadly is to explain to the government why aquaculture is actually against their interest, how it's going to cost them more in terms of money, but it's going to cost them more in terms of biodiversity, in terms of community, in terms of what makes a country unique, and that they're going to lose power. They're going to lose power to financiers, to venture capitalists, and the World Bank. And then the second audience might be people who aren't thinking twice about the plight and the struggle of fisher peoples. You know, so to build on Paula and Jones's point towards the end, with this whole blue economy and blue transformation, the way it frames the problem is one of consumption. They don't even frame it as a matter of hunger. They say, so many people in the world now are consuming more seafood. That's the quote unquote problem. And so what they're trying to do is produce more to meet a demand. But to Jones's point, this is not food. These are edible commodities is what they're trying to produce. And they're feeding consumers who aren't eating in a particular way that's necessarily about nutrition or tradition or health or anything. It's just consumption. But if you reframe the issue, one of climate change, of biodiversity, of food sovereignty, then that's where the different narrative comes through. And when you frame it as biodiversity and climate change and food sovereignty, that broader audience then can understand what's really at stake. I'll end with just sharing my experiences then. You know, I've learned a lot from you, so maybe I can give back just a little bit. I think you have more allies within the FAO than appears. So what was interesting to me was that many people within the FAO very quietly were pushing and encouraging me to amplify the experience of fisher peoples themselves and to push against the narrative that's coming out of blue transformation and blue economy and all of that. And all of this hype from this blue transformation right now is it's just about financing and capital. But I think the more organized you are, the more you continue your good work, the more you keep doing what you're doing today, you're going to build and gain more allies and build that network of solidarity. You're already doing it. And I think sort of people like me, our job is to sort of encourage others to connect with you, to be more outspoken, and to be braver to work in solidarity with you. So I just want to congratulate you on such a rich webinar. For this webinar gives me hope. It shows the power and ability for all of you to organize across different regions, to work through different languages. Solidarity is not a metaphor. It's not an idea. You're putting it in practice, and I think we experience it here today together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael. You had warned us saying that you might not be in the best of your this thing, considering it's past midnight. Well, I think we should regularly catch you past midnight. This is the best that we could pull off. Thank you very much. You actually summarized the whole discussion beautifully, and you actually threw us some accolades. Thank you for that too. But of course, the point is that I mean, first of all, to start with, like, what is the threat here? What is the challenge here? The entire framing of the way of life question. I think that is something that the fisher movements have to really, really struggle for in the coming days. Also utilize as many platforms as possible that we can engage with is a point that you really brought up well. And you brought in a reminder about probably in spaces like the Food and Agricultural Organization, it's all not lost. There could be friends and more allies there is a good reminder for WFFP in terms of our organizational and operational practices. You also placed the strategic or tactical presentation into the framing of biodiversity, food sovereignty, and climate change, all three of which are of considerable importance in global negotiations and dialogue. So I think that also brings in a whole different perspective. I would add to that, I think the ILO may not be a bad ally, considering the fact that labor practices in aquaculture industry has been extremely pathetic. And across the globe, that has been a reality. It is almost becoming the new age slavery, bonded labor of traditional fishing community people who are pushed into, or farming communities pushed into labor in aquaculture farms is a reality. And thank you for that solidarity message. I think the fact that solidarity is not a metaphor, and it is something that we have to live in our day-to-day existence. Also building stronger networks. I think this message is very, very clear from you. So I think we're happy that you could join us, and thank you for staying on for so long. We are really sorry that we have outstretched our time by almost 45 minutes by now. But thank you very much, Michael. Michael Fakhri, you are listening to him. He's the UN Special Rapporteur on right to food. I mean, it's an extremely odd hour that he's sitting up and participating in this. Thank you once again from all of us, from the organizers team, from the World Forum of Fisher People, Coastal Action Network, and across the Asia Pacific Continental Fora. We're all very, very grateful for your continuing support to the movement. Thank you once again from India. And thanks to all the panelists, all the friend community leaders who made presentations today. It was an excellent day of content input building that we got. I don't think any of us could have expected the second webinar to go as successfully as we did. And even in time, I would say that we have actually done much better. We are only late by 45 minutes. The last session, we had to break it and do it on another day. So I think we have done well. We are also getting better on the logistics of it. Thank you very much to all the interpreters who made this possible. Without you, the language communication would have been impossible. So thanks to all the interpreters, all the logistics coordination work, the Zoom management team led by Arun, Priya, all of you who contributed immensely. Jesu, Gandhi, and Ravdi, Sanath, some of you who have been integrally part of this as shapers of this entire webinar. as facilitators collectively with us. Susan, the Malaysia, Indonesia teams, and the Sri Lanka team who did not make a presentation today, but the NAFSO, the National Fisheries Solidarity in Sri Lanka, has also been the secretariat for the World Forum of Fisher People. They have played a very incredible role. Herman is here. Herman has always been part of these conversations, a silent listener sometimes. Very often he says that, no, don't put me to speak. I want to listen to some of these things. I will speak when I have to at the WFFP General Assembly. Thank you, Herman, for continuing with that role. Some of the young friends and comrades like Lakshmi, Pradeep, Praveen, Sahidul Islam, all of these presentations brought in a great deal of strength to today's inputs, I would say. And I think I have not come across a comprehensive presentation with the global analysis clubbed with each country's reality in recent times so well. So I think I'm very, very proud of the fact that our team has really pulled off a very, very content-rich webinar today. Let us hope that we are able to take this forward in a very, very strategically placed documentation fashion towards the General Assembly. And as Michael very correctly said, engage with as many international forums as possible, be it the Ocean Summit, be it any of those. But even where our representation is not even sought for, I think it's important to push doors, knock more doors, and knock them down when it is required, and walk in and make those appearances with our perspectives. I think this has been really fabulous. I'm very honored to be given a chance to moderate and kind of facilitate this kind of a session. A great deal of thanks goes to all the logistics support that has been made possible. We have had a fairly good, technical savvy team performance today. So thanks for all of that. So it's bye-bye time. We will be meeting next on 18th of October for the third webinar. Third webinar will be on the 18th of October, which will actually be on the entire question of the small-scale fisher versus the small-scale fisheries. It is an important question that we need to flag. We need to understand this a lot more deeper. Many of our own comrades start using these terminologies without engaging with the semantics, the politics of that semantics. It is important that we all step into that as we proceed towards the General Assembly. 18th of October is going to be the next webinar day. Thanks to everyone who joined today. We have had a fantastic, 100+ people on almost 80% of the time for the webinar. Was really very nice to have. So great deal. As I said, all our women
Actually,
comrades.
counting all the people who have joined as groups. So it is definitely more than 100 even now. I'm sure.
Because in Tamil Nadu, the Sneha and the
Thailand also.
Fisher Women's Collectives. In Thailand, SDF has organized rooms where many fisher community friends are sitting together and listening to one screen. So it's just one person joining, but at least 30-35 people listening to that. So thanks to everyone who is making this possible, who is making that effort. It's bye-bye time, and see you all soon on 18th of October. Thank you once again, Michael, and all the other presenters today. Paula, Jones, Siddharth, all of you, thank you very much. And a great deal of thanks to you for organizing, facilitating a lot of this outreach. Bye-bye.